If you're watching this video, you may not know me and how I got stranded here on this island. And that's okay, we're gonna be good friends, believe me. Now, you're starting your journey into ESO, or at least considering it. This world, Tamriel, is massive and it's amazing, and you're gonna have a lot of fun here. But that fun can be overshadowed by anxiety when you feel like you're wandering around with no idea what you're doing. Don't worry, there is nothing overly difficult or complicated about this game. It's really just a lot of simple things, and if someone takes the time to explain them to you, you'll understand them in no time. You just need someone with patience, someone with thousands of hours in the game, someone that has completed every single dungeon and trial on the hardest difficulty. But most importantly, someone with a lot of time on their hands. Well, it just so happens that one of the side effects of being trapped here on this island is having nothing but time. Plus, you're here watching a video about ESO, so you're already basically my best friend. Did I mention that I cling on to other people that play video games when I meet them at social gatherings? With that said, I will respond to every comment on this video. Yeah, every single one. I'm weird, I do that. So ask a question if you have one. And if you enjoy the video, be sure to like and sub so that you can be alerted to my future videos. Plus, comments are appreciated. It gives me something to read while I look for a way off of this island. Now, let's get started.
Today, I'm going to be going over the complete beginner's guide to ESO. I'm going to tell you absolutely everything that you need to know to make the most of your start in Elder Scrolls Online. There is going to be a ton of information in this guide. Feel free to digest it piecemeal or to go through the entire thing all at once. I'll be putting timestamps in the description below so that you can easily refer back to anything that you learn at a later time. But before we get into the game, let's talk about how to acquire the game in case you haven't done this yet. Purchasing Elder Scrolls Online can be one of the most confusing parts of the entire journey. A lot of times you'll be looking at your options either on the website or on Steam, and you're not sure, what do I need to get? What do I need to get started? And does this include everything that I need? So what I recommend you do is head over to the Elder Scrolls website. I'll put this link in the description below. And here you can easily see what each version of the game comes with. If you look at it, it's going to say this one's checked. So it gets the base game. It also gets Morrowind and Somerset and Elsewhere and Greymoor. These are the annual expansions. This game calls them chapters, but every other game you're used to calling them expansions. So these are the major expansions in the game. And if you bought this, the Greymoor's Collector's Edition, you'd get all of those expansions, as well as some digital Collector's Edition bonus items, right? On the flip side, you could also get the Greymoor Standard Edition and still get all of the content. You just miss out on these digital goodies. Whereas if you buy the Elder Scrolls Online Standard Edition, you're only going to get the base game and Morrowind. Usually this is the cheapest option of the bunch because you're not getting any of the extra chapters. Despite that, there is hundreds or maybe even thousands of hours of content tucked away in just this base version of the game. And once you have assessed which version of the game you want to buy, you can either buy it here on this page, or if you're the type of person that likes to have all of your games on Steam, you can buy this game over on Steam as well. The pros and cons of buying it on Steam and not buying it on Steam would be, well, the pros are you don't have to log into the game. You don't have to type your password when you boot it up. You just boot it up in Steam and go. If you buy the game through the website, you do have to type your password in every day when you log on. On the flip side here, however, there is one pro for buying it directly from the website, and that's if Steam ever goes down, you can still get into the game. If Steam goes down for some reason, and it does happen, albeit fairly rarely, but it does happen, you can't log into the game. If you're not already in the game when Steam goes down, you can't get in until Steam comes back up. Which version of the game should you get? Well, Greymoor Standard Edition is going to give you all the chapters, but if you just really want to try the game out and you don't want to spend a lot of money until you know you're going to love it, then you can't beat the Elder Scrolls Online Standard Edition. That's more than enough to get your appetite wet. All right, now let's talk about ESO Plus. What is ESO Plus going to give you? ESO Plus is the optional monthly subscription. You do not have to subscribe to ESO Plus. However, if you enjoy the game, in my opinion, it's very much worth it. But again, it's by no means mandatory. You can definitely get hundreds or thousands of hours of playtime out of this game, even without ESO Plus. ESO Plus is just gonna give you a lot of quality of life and additional content. So let's go over the items here. ESO Plus is going to give you all of the DLC packs, and I'll go over those next because there are a ton of them. We get 3 of these DLC packs every year. So every year you get 3 DLCs, which are included in ESO Plus, and a chapter expansion. So over the years, they've really added up, which means ESO Plus is a better deal every year than it was before because you're getting more out of it. You're getting more crafting storage, as in an unlimited crafting bag. This bag will hold an unlimited number of any crafting material. And once you get into ESO and you start picking up every little thing you find, you'll begin to understand how incredibly useful this is. There are so many different types of crafting materials, just like Elder Scrolls games always have, and they are literally everywhere. If you don't have ESO Plus, your inventory will fill up really fast, and you're going to be playing a game of, is this worth picking up or not? Should I carry this item or should I just sell it to a vendor? Basically, without ESO Plus, you should just ignore the crafting game for the most part. And that's okay. You don't need crafting to survive or even to do well. It's just something that's nice to have and can be beneficial, especially in the long run. Next, you get free crowns. You get 1,650 crowns per month. And you can use these crowns in the crown store. The crown store is basically, it's just this game's version of a cash shop, right? It's where you can go and sink some cash. If you want to support the game or if you just want a really cool looking mount, you can go spend some money here on things like cosmetics and mounts and pets. You also get to double the size of your bank space. Your bank space is a type of inventory that all of your toons have access to. So it's an easy way to transfer items between all of your characters or just to store something in case anybody needs it on your account. More gold and XP, you get 10% more gold and XP. It's not nothing, but it's not a significant amount. It's not going to make or break your character to have this boost. If you have it, you really won't notice it, but it is nice to have. Bonus to crafting. You also get 10% increase to crafting and inspiration and trait research rates. That's nice. I literally didn't know this was a thing until just now, and I've got thousands of hours in the game. So it is one of those things, again, that's nice, but it's not critical by any means at all. If you decide to get into housing, and in this game, housing is quite extraordinary, this will double the number of items you can have in your house. So instead of being like 350 items, you could have 700 items. Without ESO Plus, you can't dye costumes. There's various costumes in this game that you can get, and you can change the color of for free. This is nice, again, but totally not necessary, but it is nice to be able to do when you unlock a costume in game. The next item is Transmutation Crystals. These are an item that you use to retrait items. I'll go into way more detail on this later on in the guide. Right now, I'm just talking about ESO Plus and what this gives you. It's going to double your currency cap for those things, which is going to be incredibly useful. This is one of the ones where, just like the unlimited craft bag, this one is huge. This one is huge. And then last but not least, exclusive deals. What this means is that oftentimes in the Crown Store, there's going to be things for sale. And if you have ESO Plus, you get them at a discount. All right, so what's the verdict on ESO Plus? Is it worth it or is it not worth it? In my opinion, it's 100% worth it. It basically doubles the size of the game. Let's talk about that one item I said I would come back to, the DLCs that you unlock by having ESO Plus. Now you've got 2 options with the DLCs. You can either buy them all one at a time outright and not have ESO Plus, which means you'll have this content, but you won't have any of those other bonus items, the crowns that you get every month, the unlimited crafting bag, the double transmutation crystal cap, right? All those nice little things you get, you won't have those, but you can buy these outright so that you're not paying a monthly fee. That's an option. But there are a lot of them, and it's going to take a lot of money to buy every single one of these. So that's one more point on the side of ESO Plus. So let's look at them. You get Markheart, Stonethorn, Greymore, Harrowstorm, Dragonhold, Scalebreaker, Elsewhere, Wraithstone, Murkmire, Wolf Hunter, Somerset, Dragonbones, right? They just go on and on. There's a ton of them here because they have about 4 new content additions a year, 3 DLCs and a chapter. These are really starting to add up. All right, I'm going to talk about one last item before I start getting into the meat of the game, and that is the Crown Store. A lot of people want to know before they jump into a game, is it pay to win? What's tucked away in the cash shop? So let's go over that really quickly. The short answer is no. This game is definitely not pay to win. You cannot buy power in the Crown Shop. You cannot buy your gear in the Crown Shop. None of your best in slot equipment comes from the Crown Shop. The Crown Shop is mostly for cosmetics. You can buy outfits here and see, we can check out the bundle and boom, this is what my character would look like in this outfit. It's just something I could buy if I was interested in. And as you can see here, we've got the normal deal, and then you're an ESO Plus member, so it's only 1,600 crowns. Okay, so you get that little bit of a discount. You got furnishing packs, but you've got tons of stuff in the Crown Store that you can buy. None of it that you have to buy. It is all 100% optional. You do not need any of this content in order to enjoy the game, and there is no pay to win. So feel free to look at the Crown Store. Feel free to never open the Crown Store. It's totally up to you, your budget, and what kind of stuff you enjoy in a game. Now, the game does have crown crates, and you can basically buy these crown crates, and they work like crates work in every game, where you basically buy a bunch of crates and you hope that you get something good inside of them. And the main thing that people want out of these is these Radiant Apex rewards, right? You've got these mounts that you can get that look really just, these are the top of the line mounts. And then there's also some mounts that are slightly more likely to drop below. You should know, if you do start participating in this surprise mechanic, that this mount here, these Radiant Apex mounts at the top, have less than a 0.5% chance of dropping. It is incredibly rare, but it is possible. So don't go into it expecting to get one of these. Instead, be surprised if you do. Okay, just buyer beware. There's a lot of there are a lot of other consolation prizes that you can get out of here. You can get skins and other things. So even if you don't get the mount at the top, there's a lot of little neat cool things that you might get. So, buy at your own discretion. And that's basically what the Crown Store is in this game. It's mostly for cosmetics. All right, next up, let's talk about character creation. In Elder Scrolls Online, you start out being able to have as many as 8 characters. If you have a version of the game that came with Elsewhere and the Necromancer, then you will have access to 9 character slots. You can double that by purchasing additional character slots from the Crown Store for a total of 18, like I have here. It's my opinion that you will end up with a lot of characters in Elder Scrolls Online. It's a game that very much lends itself to creating alts, to having multiple characters. It makes it easy and rewarding to have more than one character because all of your endgame levels are shared across your entire account. You can create an alt and be max level almost instantly. Not only that, when you have an alt, you can do daily quests on that alt too to double your rewards for that day, or do it on a third to triple your rewards. But my favorite reason for having multiple characters is because variety is the spice of life. Some days I want to get on my Nightblade, and some days I just want to get on my Sork, and some days I just want to get on my Dragon Knight. Every day is different, and some are suited better to some tasks than others. So play one character or play 18. It's up to you. Okay, let's say you want to make a new character though. What does that entail? So the character creation process is a little bit confusing at first, but that's primarily because of the option that involve race and alliance. So I'm going to elaborate on that process, make sure you understand it so you know what you're choosing to do, because some of these choices are semi-permanent. The only reason they're not permanent is because now in the cash shop there is a way to change your alliance and to change your race. So technically nothing is permanent. You can use crowns, which are the cash shop currency, to change these things at a later date if you change your mind. So don't stress too much. There is a way to back out, but let's explain alliance and race. So by default, when you create any of these races, Breton, Orc, Redguard, it's going to end up in the Daggerfall Alliance. When you create one of these races, High Elf, Wood Elf, Khajiit, it's going to end up in the Aldemary Dominion. And finally, the Ebonheart Pact consists of Argonians, Dark Elves, and North. So if you don't have the Any Race, Any Alliance package, which is something you can buy in that cash shop I mentioned, then when you choose one of these races, it will automatically get dumped into the alliance that it's affiliated with. Now, does this matter? How does this impact you? Well, if you don't have friends already PvPing in the open world PvP in this game in one of these alliances, it doesn't matter. This literally doesn't affect you at all. The only reason this would matter is if you wanted to go to Cyrodiil or into Imperial City sewers and PvP with a friend who is on the same alliance. If that's something you want to do down the road, then it might be worth it for you guys to coordinate which alliance you're going to choose. If you're not interested in PvP and all you're going to be doing is PvE content, then the alliance thing will it will never affect your character at all. You can do the quest for all 3 alliances and it becomes very non-factor for you. That's the most confusing part of this process for most people, I think. Beyond that, you've got your typical options. You're going to choose what class do you want to play. There's currently 6 classes in the game: the Dragon Knight, the Sorcerer, the Nightblade, the Templar, the Warden, and the Necromancer. All of the classes in Elder Scrolls Online can play all of the roles. I'll do a much more deeper dive of the roles later on, but the important thing to know while creating your character is that any class can be any role. So a Dragon Knight can be a tank, a healer, or a damage dealer. Same with a Sorc, same with the Nightblade, and so on. They can all fill all of the roles. It's something that's very unique to Elder Scrolls Online, and it's something that allows for quite a bit of build diversity. And it's one of my favorite parts about the game. I have an entire YouTube video on all of the classes. I'll link that in the description below if that's something you're interested in. But I'll go over them lightly here as well, just so you have a feeling for it. Right now, the Dragon Knight is a class that deals largely with fire and poison. The Sorcerer deals largely with wind and lightning. The Nightblade deals with like shadows and darkness. The Templar uses light and solar energy. The Warden uses nature and animal companions. And the Necromancer uses skeletons and corpses and things like that. Which class is the best class? Well, that changes every patch. The meta is ever changing and ever shifting. All of the classes are always capable of doing all of the content. That is the important thing to know. There is no wrong class. There is no bad class. There is just a class that's slightly better than the rest every patch, but it changes approximately every 3 months or so. So choose the class that looks the most appealing to you rather than choosing the class just because it's the best today, because tomorrow it might be second best. It might be the third best. You just don't know. But like I said, the important thing is that the worst class is never very far behind the best class. They've done an excellent job of keeping every class relevant. After you've chosen your class, you've got a bunch of options here. You can make your character, large. It's all your usual cosmetic options. I won't go into it too much here, but you've got all of the stuff you expect to have, maybe even more than you expect to have. You get to fine tune everything. You can do the chest, you can do the posterior. I know that those are 2 favorites on the Argonian, so classes with tails. Posterior is actually your tail instead of your butt. So that's nice. And then of course your face, you can modify your face all that you want. You can pick different hairstyles and you can change the age. These changes are probably a little bit more obvious on, say, a more human-looking class here. We come to the face and see he gets a little bit older looking, but the system's fairly complex. And it allows you to create a very unique character for yourself that you're going to love. All right, so once you've made your character, you're going to start off in one of these zones. Every one of these places in the game is a zone. Either it was part of the base game, or it was a DLC zone, such as Murkmire, that was added later on. But the important thing to know is that you're going to spawn in one of these zones. The way the game handles this is it spawns you when you start in the newest piece of content you own. So if you bought the version that comes with Morrowind and nothing else, and your friend buys the version that comes with Skyrim or Greymoor, they're going to start in Greymoor and you're going to start in Vvardenfell. The important thing to know is that once you've spawned in those places, you can leave the second you get there and head off to whichever zone your friend is in or whatever zone that you want to quest in first. The order that you do the zones is entirely up to you, and there's no huge benefit to doing them in any particular order. It's really, do you want to do them in the order that the story intended, or do you just want to do the newest content first? There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's up to you. So in Elder Scrolls Online, there's the zone stories that I mentioned, right? Every zone has its own compartmentalized story. And then there's also the main story, which is just kind of like the prologue of the game. It was the main story when it first came out, and it explains a lot about what's going on in all of these base game zones, such as Dolmen and things like that. You can always find out which quests you're doing by opening up your quest log on PC. You just press J for journal, and it'll bring you to this screen here, and it separates your quests by zone. I've got quests in Aradin, Numbra, and then even down here it says main quests. I've got my main quest, and then things like pledges down below. It keeps it nice and neat and organized. And you can have up to 25 quests active at a time. So feel free to go to one zone and do all of them. You can do the main quest, the side quests, the daily quests before heading on to the next zone, or you can spelunk around and end up with a few from all over the place. The choice is yours. And that leads me to the next item. While you're questing in Elder Scrolls Online, occasionally you're going to die. And a lot of people wonder, what does that mean? What happens exactly when I die? Well, besides the obvious, what's also going to happen is you're going to need to have a soul gem on you. Here you can see I've got tons of soul gems. First, you have an empty soul gem, and then when you're killing things, they fill up. You will find these all over the game. There are tons of mobs dropping tons of these gems. I've never had a problem having way more than I need. I'm usually just vendoring these items to the merchants for some extra cash. As you can see, I can sell each stack for 6,000 gold. That's not bad money. So that's what I'll do when I get too many of them on me, like I kind of have right now. I'll go to the vendor and I'll just sell a couple stacks. I'm just making sure to leave enough on me in case I have a really rough raid group or a really rough trial, because you do need a soul gem to res yourself, and you need a soul gem if you want to res someone else in a boss fight. You will always be able to res yourself if you're not fighting a boss, whereas in trials, during trash fights, or anywhere else in the game during boss fights, someone else will need to res you until the battle's over, at which point you'll then again be able to res yourself using one of your soul gems. Alright, so my character has died. This is what the death screen looks like. You can see at the bottom there I have an option to res right here using one of my soul gems. I can either choose to save that gem, or if I don't have a gem, I can just press R to spawn at the nearest Wayshrine. In this case, it looks like it's going to toss me right here, back in town. Where you choose to spawn is up to you. Sometimes spawning at the shrine is where you wanted to be, so you could do that. And sometimes you want to resume your battle and get revenge on the mob that killed you. We'll go ahead and res here so you can see what that looks like. So you'll res. You'll be a ghost for a little while. You're immune to damage for a short while. And then after a time, you will become able to cast abilities and to be attacked again. Dying increases the durability loss on your armor. This game allows you to repair your gear once it starts to break. When a piece of gear breaks in Elder Scrolls Online, it is like you are not wearing that gear at all. So it's very important that you're not running around with gear that is broken, because you might as well be running around naked. This is also very important because Elder Scrolls Online uses sets, and if one of the pieces of the set is broken, it's like you're not wearing that piece. So instead of having your 5-piece bonus, you would only have your 4-piece bonus. And if 2 of them are broken, now you don't have 5-piece bonus, you have 3-piece bonus, and so on. The next thing that's kind of confusing for new players where it pertains to gear, this doesn't have anything to do with deaths, but your enchants on your weapons have a charge. And this is the other thing that soul gems are used for. As I use this weapon, this blue bar in the middle there is going to go down over time. Eventually it's going to be empty, and my fiery weapon enchantment will no longer be proccing. So what I would have to do is right-click the item and click charge. Now it's going to use the soul gem, and now it's fully charged again. You do not need to re-enchant the item. You do not need to buy a new one. All you have to do is right-click it and charge the item with a soul gem, which again, you have tons of soul gems. You'll most likely have more than you're ever going to need, so it's not a big deal. All right, as for the user interface, the important things to know about your user interface are you've got your chat box over here. You can grab that by the word chat and move it anywhere that you would like. You can also reshape it. You can press the period on your keyboard or open up chat to move your mouse around and select things and move them if you would like. Some things you can move anytime you want. Some things you might need an add-on in order to move it. My UI is going to look a little bit different from yours if you're a brand new player because I have add-ons installed. I'll go in depth on add-ons, but I have a really good video on all of the best add-ons for Elder Scrolls Online, and I'll link that down in the description below as well for you. But beyond that, you have your skills down here. These are your 5 front bar abilities. In Elder Scrolls Online, you have a front bar and a back bar, basically 2 weapons that you alternate between constantly in battle, depending on which skills you want to use. So you've got your front bar, and then you can swap to the back bar. You can have 5 abilities active at a time, as well as your ultimate. So 6 abilities at a time for a total of 12 abilities at your disposal at any moment. Over here, you've got your consumable that is quick slotted. For consumables, the important thing to know is that you can open up your inventory and then press your consumable button. On computer, it is Q. That's going to bring up your hot wheel. These are all of your quick slotted consumables, the things that you can call anytime, anywhere, at a moment's notice. You can select these and use them. Health potions, your magic potions, the food that you're always using, your merchant or banker, what have you. And when you do that, over here on the right, it will have all the items that are eligible to be slotted onto the quick slot wheel. It's worth noting that up here at the top, you can see there are more than just consumables. You can actually slot tools, mementos, which are basically little character animations, assistants, which is my merchant and my banker, and even cosmetics. Beyond that, you've got your menu system, which has inside of it the crown store. Crown crates, this is where you would open your crates if you happen to win one by watching, for instance, one of my streams when drops are enabled, or if you purchase them from the crown store. You've got your inventory, which is what we were just discussing a moment ago. The inventory has filters at the top, which will allow you to sort by item type, such as weapons, armor, jewelry. And then below that, you can also filter it even more by necklace or rings and so on. Or if you just want to search all and you just want to find that one item that you know is in here, like for instance, your essence of spell power, right? Or your essence of magicka, you can just start typing the name and the item will come right up if it's in your inventory. You also have your craft bag if you have ESO Plus. This is why ESO Plus is so worth it. This may be the most worthwhile part of having ESO Plus. It's this craft bag right here, which is absolutely monstrous. As you can see, I will be scrolling for a very long time, showing you all of the materials I have in my craft bag. This craft bag is account wide, so any crafting materials that you pick up will be dumped into this craft bag automatically, no matter what tune you're on. And then if you ever need them, you can grab them out of here from any tune. And as you can see, we are still going. There's just a ton of crafting materials in this game. ESO Plus isn't required, but if you want to get into crafting, it is incredibly helpful and almost required. The next tab in your inventory is your currency tab, which is going to show you how many alliance points you have. These are something you earn for PvPing. Your crown gems. These are what you get. If you get items in crates that you don't want, you can deconstruct those items for crown gems. Let's say you bought a bunch of crates or you got one for free from watching the stream and you opened it up and it's just a bunch of stuff you're not excited about. It's potions and poisons and trivial items that are of no use to you or anybody for that matter. You can deconstruct those and turn that into a currency. And these crown gems are kind of like pennies. One of them will get you absolutely nothing, but if you save them up for a while, you will buy incredible mounts, such as this one right here I bought with those very crown gems. It's one of my favorite mounts in the game right now, and I was able to buy it just by saving those things up over time as I was opening crates from drop stays and things like that. And, I didn't like the things I was getting, so I was deconstructing them, and then boom, one day this was up for sale for gems, and I purchased it. So that's something that these gems can get you. Then you've got your crowns, you've got event tickets. There's about one event per month in Elder Scrolls Online, and each event is usually accompanied by a way to get tickets. You can use these tickets to buy cosmetics and other things. Depending on the event, what you can buy with the tickets changes. You've got your gold, you've got your outfit change tokens, you've got your Telvar stones. This is a PvP currency from Imperial City Sewers. You've got your transmute crystals. Now I have a 1,000 transmute crystal cap. If you don't have ESO Plus, it's a 500 transmute crystal cap. Transmute crystals are incredibly important, and I'll go into exactly what those do a little bit later. You've got your undaunted keys. These are also incredibly important. We'll go into those. And your writ vouchers. The next screen in the UI is your character screen. You can open this on PC at any time by pressing C. Here it will show you your character's attributes. Every time you level, you get a point that you can invest into your attributes, up to 64 points in total. You can also see your stats, such as max magicka, health, and stamina, and any buffs that your character might have on you, including a food buff if you're running one. In this menu, you can also choose to show your outfit or not. So if this is the gear that I'm actually wearing, then there's an outfit station that allows me to change my appearance regardless of what I'm actually wearing. And I will tell you more about that and how to take advantage of that later. And then you've got titles here. You can choose a title for your character and slot that here if you're into titles. The next screen is our skills screen. Now, again, yours might look a little different than mine because I've got add-ons that are adjusting the way this appears. But essentially, the important thing to know about your skills screen is that the first thing on the skills screen is going to be your class skill lines. Every class has 3 skill lines, 1, 2, 3, and they all have an ultimate, 5 abilities, and some passives down below each skill line. Not only can you choose a skill, but once you have chosen a skill, you will have an option to upgrade that skill into 2 different morphs. So every skill has a base version, and then you can always morph that into a second version. And there's always 2 options for every skill. Along with all of your class skills, you've got your weapon skill lines. Every weapon has its own skill line, that's right. So each weapon, if you're using it for this guy, he's a magic attune, so he's using a destruction staff, which has 5 abilities on it that I can choose to use or not, and a ton of passives that we can unlock and upgrade, as well as an ultimate. So what you do is you're going to grab your favorite abilities from your class skill lines, from your weapon skill lines, and then there's even armor passives and abilities that you can grab if you would like. There's guild passives and skill lines as well. So as you can see, there's tons of different skill lines in this game, tons of different ways to earn them, to unlock them, to upgrade them. There's a lot of customization in this game to allow you to create a character that is truly yours. Now, not all characters are equal and not all will be as good as the rest. Some will be a lot better than others, as is the case with a lot of games that allow unlimited customization on your character. It's very easy to create a character that's not very strong, but it's also easy to create one that is. The important thing to remember is that nothing is permanent. You can always respec. I'll go into how to do that here in a moment. Either play the game the way you want and don't worry about your build, just grab what looks interesting to you, or go ahead and follow a build like one of the ones I've got written up on my website. I'll link that in the description below as well. That website is eso.justlootit.com, where I have tons of group builds, solo builds, and more.
Okay, next let's talk about race. Which race should you choose? First, let's start with the meta. Stamina DPS are either going to go Dark Elf and even Khajiit. These two are neck and neck right now as far as raw damage output goes. Followed closely behind by Orc, and then ironically High Elf puts out a ton of damage, and then Redguard and Wood Elf are going to be your sustain races. These are the ones that have passives that are going to improve your ability to cast lots of stamina abilities without running out of stamina. These are especially useful when you're at lower champion level, where it's usually harder for you to sustain. Later on, your sustain gets a lot better because of your champion passives, and these become much less necessary. For the mag DPS, we've got High Elf as your best in slot race, followed very closely by Dark Elf and Khajiit. Next, in an interesting change of pace, we've got Orc, which is typically a stam tune, but since they have a spell damage line, they actually put out a decent amount of Magicka DPS. And then we've got Breton, which is your sustain race for Magicka DPS tunes, which simply means they're able to cast more magic spells for longer without running out of resources. Same with the Redguard and Wood Elf for stamina. This is more useful early on when you don't have the champion points that are going to allow you to have better sustain. This is also insanely useful for solo builds where you don't have people in your party that are giving you buffs that improve your sustain. So Breton is actually a really solid choice for solo mag DPS, and Wood Elf and Redguard are fantastic choices for solo stam DPS. Next, we've got the healer and tank roles. The best in slot healer class right now is Breton for the sustain. Runner-ups are going to go to Argonian, High Elf, Khajiit, and Dark Elf, and then the best tank class is going to be Nord, followed closely by Imperial and Argonian, and even Redguard is not a bad choice. Do you have to pick one of these? What if you don't like the meta options? Well, don't worry. These are just suggestions. These are just the ones that perform the best. But even the worst performers for a role are still going to be able to do all the content in the game, albeit it will be a little more difficult for them. The only place in which it really matters which race you pick is going to be in the very end game content, where you want every advantage you can get just so that you have a chance at taking down the content that you need to take down within the time limits that are imposed upon you. Okay, so now let's dive deep into each one of these races' passives and talk about which of their passives are actually useful, which ones you should pay attention to, which ones you should ignore, and what makes them tick. We're going to go through this list alphabetically, so let's start with Argonian. Argonian gets 1,000 of each resource, which makes them a really well-rounded race. They get 6% increased healing done, which is one of the reasons that they're fantastic healers. They also get a disease resistance line, which I'm going to be honest with you, these two right here, we don't think about much. They're there, but they're not making a huge impact on any content in this game. This here is massive though. They get 3,125 health, magicka, and stamina every time they drink a potion. Typically when someone drinks a health potion, they get health and nothing else. If they drink a stamina potion, they get stamina and nothing else. And if they drink a magicka potion, they get magicka and nothing else, but not the Argonian. It's a tripot for them, which are actually very expensive potions most people have to buy. Argonians use any potions and they get a tripot for free, which means it's going to give them all 3 resources every time they drink a potion. This passive is especially useful for tanks who are constantly draining all 3 resource pools. And then we have the last passive line, which I'm going to go over for every race, and I want you to ignore this one when you're choosing your race because it doesn't matter. The reason this one doesn't matter is because it's always going to give you some kind of boosted XP, right? To a skill line, a weapon line, or an armor line, right? It's something that doesn't matter past the first 1% of the game. Your character is going to max out that skill line within the first week or 2. And then you play this MMO for months or even years. And this line right here is doing absolutely nothing for you because it's so easy to get to max level on all of these skill lines. This passive on every race should be ignored when you're picking your character, and think of it more like, oh, I picked Argonian. Bonus, I get Resto Staff skill line XP. But this should in no way dictate which race you play because after the first week of being on your character, it no longer matters because the skill line is going to be maxed out with or without this passive. Then it gets 50% swimming speed, the most RP passive in the game. There is no real water content in this game, so this passive is mostly a meme. Breton, 2,000 max magicka, minus 7% of magicka abilities cost, 130 magicka recovery. These 3 right here are the heart and soul of the Breton. This is why we pick them for mag tunes. This is why healers choose them. They have fantastic sustain, unmatched by any other magicka race. This sustain is perfect for healers, it's perfect for magicka damage dealers, and they get spell resistance, which is fantastic for solo builds. I really like running Breton on a character I know I'm going to be doing almost exclusively solo content on, because when you're soloing, that's where you're most likely to run into resource management problems. You don't have a healer throwing you resources, you don't have a tank buffing you. It's you alone that's responsible for making sure you don't run out of resources. So all of these passives are really nice. You will very often be burning, chilled, or concussed, so you'll get an additional 2310 resistances. This right here is going to be why this is a fantastic solo class. On top of the sustain, which is really difficult to manage when you're soloing, you get quite a bit of spell resistance, which is really nice as you will be taking all of the damage when you're soloing. You won't have a tank in front of you, so this is going to help to mitigate some of that damage for you, which makes Breton a really nice solo race. My favorite for magicka tunes. And then we've got the last one, which I've asked you to ignore when considering a race, right? We get 15% light armor skill line XP. Great. You're going to level up your light armor a little bit faster. It doesn't matter because instead of being maxed out in a few days, it's going to be maxed out by the 4th day of the character, at which point this may as well have never existed. Also, you get 1% bonus alliance point gain, which isn't nothing, but it's really close to nothing. Next, we've got Dark Elf, which is going to be one of our jack of all trades races. They get max stamina and max magicka. They get weapon damage and spell damage, which makes them one of the best in slot races for both stamina damage dealers and magicka damage dealers. So if you don't know if you want to be a stam DPS or a mag DPS, you can pick Dark Elf and be ready for either one. Then they've got a massive 4,620 flame resistance, which is actually a pretty substantial amount of flame resistance. Recently, they doubled the amount of flame resistance they get to make this buff matter, and it worked. This can be pretty nice in certain content where you're taking a lot of fire damage. And then last and definitely least, we have the Superfluous line, which is going to give us dual wield XP and minus 50% damage from lava. There is no content in which this is going to be relevant. Nobody should be standing in lava, and if you stand in lava for very long, you're going to be dead anyway. 50% less damage or no. Next up, let's go over High Elf. High Elf is the best in slot mag DPS race because they get 2,000 max magicka and 258 spell damage. If you notice here, that is barely edging out the max mag for Dark Elf. So they are just a hair better. And I mean just a hair. It's very, very close between the High Elf and the Dark Elf. But the Dark Elf has the ability to go mag or stam. So it's really not a bad choice to choose Dark Elf. However, High Elf does also get restore 625 of your lowest magicka or stamina after activating any ability. So they've got a nice little sustain passive built in here, which is actually pretty useful. They also get a 5% damage reduction while casting abilities. We don't cast a lot of channeled abilities. This might come in handy if you are using a channeled spammable like Crystal Shards on a source chart. For a lot of classes, this is not going to do anything for you. Then we have 15% destruction staff skill line and 1% generic XP gain. Again, it's not nothing, but it's very close. High Elf will be an excellent choice for anybody that wants to be a Magicka DPS toon. And in a recent patch, they were also given weapon damage, making this best in slot mag DPS not a bad choice for stamina DPS. Next we have Imperial, who's great for tanking and for PvP. You get 2,000 additional health, you get 2,000 stamina, and most importantly you get minus 6% costs of all your abilities. This is great for your sustain, and this applies to your ultimate as well. This means you can cast your ultimate 6% sooner because it costs 6% less to cast it. And then for our superfluous line, we've got the 15% one hand and shield skill line XP and 1% extra gold gained. Next, we have Khajiit, the other jack of all trades race. Khajiit is going to give you max health, mag, and stamina. They're also going to have 100 health recovery. Then they're also going to have 85 mag and stam recovery. So you see they're getting mag health and stam. Then they're also getting mag and stam recovery. Then they're getting crit damage to both mag and stam damage. And they're getting crit healing in case you want to be a healer with this character. Khajiit is the most well-rounded race in the game, best suited for every role in the game. They've got mag recovery, stam recovery, health recovery. They've got crit damage and crit healing. Literally, they have every role in the game covered, whether it's a tank, a healer, or a DPS. And then they've got this RP passive down here, which is going to reduce the range in which they're detected by 3 meters. This is never going to come in handy in group content. It can be useful while you're soloing around or RPing or thieving or questing, but generally in group content, you're never going to be sneaking anywhere. It doesn't really work out that way. And then we've got our superfluous passive, 15% medium armor skill line, and an actually useful passive here, 5% chance to pickpocket. This one right here is not bad if you're going to go around pickpocketing or using that as a way to make money. You can do that, an additional 5% chance, so that your chance to succeed on a pickpocket is 80 or 85% instead of 75 or 80%, can be really nice. Next, we've got Nord, which is considered to be the best in slot race for tanks by most of the player base. Nords get 1,500 max stamina and 1,000 health. They also, most importantly, get 2,600 physical resistance and spell resistance, and then an additional 4,620 hold resistance. That is a ton of resistances to damage that they get for free. Other races, if they play tank, they've got to go and acquire these types of resistances by putting on gear. But not the Nord. They get it built in as a racial passive, which is a large part of why people choose them for tanks. And just like the other passive I talked about earlier, this one was recently doubled to make it a more meaningful passive. It used to be 2310 and now it's 4620, which means it's now something that's pretty exciting. They also get 5 ultimate generation whenever taking damage. Well, as a tank, they're always taking damage, which means every 10 seconds they get an additional 5 ult charge, which is great. One of the things tanks are doing the most in this game is casting their support ultimate to make their DPS do more damage or to help them survive. Either way, this is incredibly useful for a tank. And then finally, we've got the two-handed skill line XP. Again, please ignore this one when you're choosing your race. It doesn't matter. And then finally, we've got 15 extra minutes on a drink buff. This is nice if you're using a drink buff. 15 minutes is a decent amount of time. These buffs typically last for 1 to 2 hours. So 15 minutes on top of that is not bad. Next, we have the Orc. Orc used to be the best in slot race for stamina DPS, but they got a little bit of a nerf and some other races got a buff, making them now maybe the 3rd best in slot for stamina DPS. They get 1,000 max stamina, they get 1,000 of their max health, and then they get a 2,125 heal whenever they deal damage every 4 seconds. So this works out to be a little over 500 health per second that they end up having come in because of this passive, which is kind of nice for solo. It's not incredibly useful in group content. They also have 258 weapon damage and 258 spell damage. Because of this line right here, they're actually decent as a mag DPS choice, which is kind of weird, but this was added in the last patch. So there it is. They've also got a 10% sprint speed bonus and minus 12% sprint cost, which is incredibly useful for melee DPS, as You're constantly trying to close ground on enemies, which means you're sprinting, and it's costing you 12% less to do so than other races. And then last and definitely least, they get their heavy armor skill line XP, which you should ignore. And then they also get a 10% inspiration bonus, which means when you deconstruct gear, your crafting bench levels 10% faster. And just like your heavy armor skill line, your crafting benches will be leveled in a matter of days or a couple of weeks. They'll be max level, and then this passive line, again, it's going to be doing nothing for your character, so do disregard it when choosing your race. Next, we have Redguard. Redguard gets 2,000 max stamina, minus 8% weapon ability cost. For these reasons right here, it's an especially good stamina DPS class, particularly when it comes to sustain. Great for low CP characters or new players, decent for tanking, but with sustain being what it is presently in the game, it's fairly easy to sustain, especially in group content, and this passive is a bit overkill. I would much rather have the weapon damage from one of the races that gives weapon damage if I'm going to be a stamina DPS. They also get minus 15% snare slowing. This feels really good. They get 1005 stamina restore when dealing damage, improving their sustain even further. And then again, 15% one-handed shield skill line XP and an extra 15 minutes on food buffs. Most of our buffs in this game are food buffs, so you get an extra 15 minutes on that 1 or 2 hour buff. It's nice. It's not nothing. This one's actually something, but it's nothing to write home to mom about. And last but not least, the Wood Elf. The Wood Elves get 2,000 max stamina, 258 stamina recovery. For these reasons right here, they make decent stam DPS. They're more of a sustain pick than a damage pick. And as I kind of mentioned, sustain is already pretty easy in ESO right now. So it's a little bit overkill to pick a race just for the sustain. I would typically opt for the damage. However, there is a compelling argument to be made for Wood Elves, especially for solo play. And we'll get into why here. You've got the 2,000 poison resistance and disease resistance, which is another thing where you don't really notice it or think about it while you're playing the game. You get 3-meter stealth detection. Again, you don't really notice this, especially in PvE content. This might come in useful in PvP. They get a constant 5% move speed bonus, which is nice. 5% is something. It's not a lot, but it's something. They get 950 physical and spell penetration. And this is probably the most interesting line that I see here. Stamina tunes right now are struggling to penetrate the enemy's resistances, and especially while soloing, it's pretty difficult to meet the pen cap. So for this reason, Wood Elf, you can make a pretty good argument for Wood Elf despite not getting that weapon damage line. They do get max stamina, and they are getting some free penetration that other stamina races don't get, which can allow you to spec into more weapon damage to kind of help balance things out. They also get 10% fall damage protection, which means you're going to take 10% less damage when you fall from something. Fall damage in ESO is pretty significant. It's pretty punishing. There was a passive built into the game called Break Fall now. It's in the champion point tree where you get 35% fall damage reduction. So this 10%, it wasn't very much before, and it's even less significant now with that other CP passive being built into the game. It'd be cool to see them increase this and make it a little more interesting for Wood Elves. And then you get your 15% bow skill line XP. Again, ignore this. It doesn't matter. Do not feel like you have to go bow because Wood Elves have a bow passive. I can't express how important this is not, right? This doesn't matter. Ignore this line. And then, of course, you should very much be aware of the fact that Wood Elves are known to eat friends, neighbors, and family members. Be wary. Wood Elves are cannibals. Due to the Green Pact, a tree in the forest told them they are not allowed to eat green things. They must preserve the forest. And so it instead said, you have to eat people. And Wood Elves do this. This is written into the lore of the game. If you don't believe me, go ahead and Google Green Pact and see what that's all about. Think of them as like anti-vegans. Wood Elf mains, don't get mad, I'm just the messenger. Okay, next up, let's talk about attribute points. When you get them, how you get them, and when you stop getting them, and how you should invest them. You get attribute points every time you level. Sometimes you get one, sometimes you get a few. It depends on the level that you're hitting. You're going to get attribute points all the way until level 50. If you're a stamina DPS, you're going to put all of your attribute points into stamina. If you're a magicka DPS, you're going to put all of your points into magicka. If you're a tank, you're going to put almost all of them into health, possibly a little bit into mag and a little bit into stam. If you're a healer, you're going to go all magicka. The reason that we put our points this way is, well, tanks, they need a lot of health. That's fairly obvious. But stamina DPS, the formula that determines how much damage you do, takes into account the size of your resource pool. You get roughly 100 weapon damage for every 1,000 stamina. So you want to have a very large stamina pool so that your weapon abilities are hitting that much harder. Not only that, the more stamina you have, the more abilities you can cast without running out of stamina. So it's good for your sustain, and it's also good for the damage that you do. Likewise, the more magicka you have, the more spell damage you get, and the more magic abilities you can cast. Then there's healers who are going to go all magicka, again, so that they can cast more heals, and they get spell damage, which impacts the potency of their heals. At level 50, you stop getting attribute points. You'll have a total of 64, all said and done. This is when you start getting instead champion points. So let's talk about champion points. You get 1 champion point every time you level after 50. There are a total of 3,600 possible champion levels. Although you don't need anywhere near that many, your power is going to cap out around 1,600 champion points, at which point you're going to be basically investing horizontally in other passives that you could potentially use instead of the ones that you're currently using, right? So it's not vertical progression after 1,600, it's horizontal. You're basically getting alternate options that you could use because you can only have 4 slotted at a time. At this point, you're all maxed out and you already have 4 slotted. You're investing in passives that you can't currently use, but you could drag them onto the bar and use them instead of the ones that you are using. With Champion Point System 2.0, it added this system of slotting passives. This is a way to curtail your power and to prevent you from getting too powerful from your passives. It also allows you to make some interesting choices for your character. There are 3 different colors of champion points. The green CP tree is more or less your RP tree. There's no power built into the green tree, and this is by design. They want this tree to be completely independent of power so that you cannot min-max it, right? They want you to be able to look at this and go, that sounds fun, I'm gonna grab it, without feeling bad about grabbing the fun one, right? They don't want you to feel like, I can't use that because that's a power loss. Whereas the blue tree is very much, it's about power and it's about damage mitigation. This is where you're going to determine how hard you hit and how hard you get hit. And then the red tree is what's going to determine things like how good your sustain is and things like that. Inside of these CP trees, we have what are called the sub trees. So here on the chest, these purple nodes dictate a subtree, right? And then this is another line of passives that you could invest in. Sometimes you have to slot them and sometimes you don't. The way to tell the passives that need to be slotted, apart from the ones that do not, is to look at the color of the star. So we have 3 different types of stars. We've got the blue stars, which have to be slotted. If you hover over them, it will always say add to champion bar to activate, which means if you put points in this, but you don't drag it onto the bar up top, it's not doing anything for you. Then you've got the yellow stars, which means if you put points in this, you've got that passive. It's there. It's a passive that's always unlocked so long as you've got points invested in it. And then you've got the purple stars, which are subtrees. So as you can see here, I've got points in this yellow star, so I automatically get 160 crit chance per stage for a total at this point of 640 crit chance. These numbers are subject to change in coming patches, so if yours is a different value than mine, don't worry about it. That's just sauce balancing these passives. The important thing to remember is yellow, you have all the time. Blue, you have to slot on the bar or it's not doing anything. So make sure that you don't have more than 4 of these spec'd into unless you have more points than you need because you've already invested in all the yellow ones and the 4 you need. Then you can start doing your horizontal progression and start grabbing extra ones that you could slot in niche situations. Like say you're in a boss fight where you're going to be behind the boss and you want this bonus damage, you could drag this up here and replace one of these for a slight DPS boost. If you're looking at the CP tree and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, don't worry. Everybody is. Everybody feels overwhelmed. This is by far the most intimidating part of the entire game because there are so many passives. I highly encourage you to just hover over them and read what they say. They're very short descriptions. They're very easy to digest and look and see what you're getting from these. Or just follow a build. Everybody that puts out a decent build guide is also going to tell you how to invest your champion points. So follow a build guide. I've got a ton of them. There's lots of creators putting out great builds. Just put the points where they tell you to. And if you don't understand why you're putting your points there, don't worry. You're not alone. I would say more than half of the player base is just putting their points where they're told to, and they don't really think too much about it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to get into it and you want to theory craft and you want to come up with your own passives that sound fun to you, all the power to you. Whatever you do, don't let this stress you out. If it's stressing you out, just follow a build. The only other thing to mention about champion points is when it comes to veteran content, you'll unlock it at level 50. You shouldn't touch it until CP 160. At 160, you hit max gear level. Now you can do veteran dungeons. At CP 300, you're going to unlock veteran DLC dungeons. They're going to be very difficult for you at this point, if I'm being real with you, but it is possible to take them down. Just be aware that it's going to hurt things are going to hit very hard, you're going to probably die a lot. So make sure you take someone with you, if possible, that can teach you the mechanics. Every time you level, you're going to get 1 CP. It's going to alternate green, blue, red, green, blue, red. You get 1 point per level. So the first level might be green, and then the next would be blue, and then the next red, and then it would start over again, green, blue, red, 1 point per level.
Really quickly, I'm going to touch on named buffs and debuffs. If a buff or debuff is not named, it doesn't have a name like minor force or major force, that means you can stack it with anything. If it's named, it cannot stack with itself. So if we look at an ability, like probably one of the most common buffs that every DPS is going to use is minor force. So if we look at Barb Trap, it says right there, grants you minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10% for the duration. So you cannot stack this minor force with, for instance, the Sigic Order channeled acceleration, which is going to also give minor force. You can choose one or the other, but you may not stack both, right? So the important thing about named buffs and debuffs is simply that you can stack a minor with a major, but you cannot stack a major buff with a major buff of the same name. You can stack 2 different major or minor buffs, right? You can stack minor evasion and minor force, but you can't stack minor force with minor force. All right, next, let's talk about the roles in Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online has your 3 archetypal roles. You've got your tank, who's taking all the damage. You've got your damage dealers, who are dishing out the damage to the mobs that the tank is tanking, right? The tank maintains taunt on them so that they attack the tank. And then the damage dealers do all the damage and take that mob down. Then you've got the healer, who's responsible for keeping everyone alive. Now, each of those roles has a few more responsibilities beyond that. The tanks, while they're tanking, they're also going to be buffing and debuffing. And the healer, while it's healing, is also going to be buffing and debuffing. And the healer, on top of that, the healer also throws out synergies for the tank and the DPS. I'll get more into synergies later. But the important thing to know is that you've got 3 primary roles: your tanks, your damage dealers, which composed of your stamina damage dealer and your magic damage dealer, and then you've got your healer. All of the endgame content in Elder Scrolls Online is going to require a combination of the 3. Some of the earlier content you can get away with just having all DPS, and then some of the mid-game content you can get away with not having a tank or not having a healer. But then once you get to that end-game content, those trials and things like that, you are going to need all 3 roles. And if you're curious which role is in the largest shortage, it is by far the tank. If you want instant queues all the time, anytime, become a tank. You will be loved, you will be wanted, you will have no problem finding people to play with. We are always looking for tanks for dungeons, for trials. Next up would be the healers, and then the role that we have way too many of course, is the damage dealers, just like in every MMO. If you're a damage dealer, you are going to have the longest dungeon queues. Just a heads up. It doesn't stop me from rolling damage dealer, it's just what I love to play. All right, are you still with me? All right, let's talk about next, Mundus Stones. Mundus Stones are a passive that every character in this game gets, and they're very powerful passives. And it's a passive you can change anytime you want for free. All you have to do is go interact with the corresponding Mundus Stone. So typically, damage dealers will take the Shadow Mundus, right? So if I look at these, it tells me which one they are. This is Tower, Thief, Steed. This is the Shadow Mundus right here. And so I've got Boon, the Shadow, increases your critical damage and healing by 12%. Anytime I want, I can come here and I can interact, for instance, with the Steed. And that's going to change my bonus, my passive buff on this character, to the Steed. Increase your movement speed by 11% and health recovery by 281. Now, you can change these anytime you want, and you can do it for free. You can either teleport to someone's house who has them in it. That's kind of rare, as they are pretty expensive. Mundus Stones can also be found throughout the game in various zones and in various places. So be sure to Google the Mundus Stone you're looking for and find out which one is the most accessible for you. But the important thing is that the Mundus Stone is free. You can get it as soon as you get into the game. Make your way over to one, get that buff sooner than later. Don't forget about this. It's easy to forget about it. So be sure to grab it as soon as you have a chance. Even if it's not the one you want for the rest of the game, you can grab the first one you come by, because hey, any buff is better than no buff at all. So be sure to grab one as soon as you can. Typically, damage dealers are going to go for the Shadow for the increased critical damage. Healers are going to go for Thief for the critical healing. Now, in Elder Scrolls Online, a level 10 player can get grouped with a level 810 player. And there's a reason that this works. It's because the world is scaled for level 50 players. Now, the level 810 players are going to have no problem conquering the content in that world because they are very overqualified. Whereas a low level 10 player should struggle, but he doesn't, because at level 10, you're given a buff that makes you capable of competing on the level of level 50 players. And as you level, that buff is stripped away. So what you're doing as you level up is you're finding armor for your level. And then every time you level, you're losing a little bit of power, but you're also finding armor that replaces the power you lost from this hidden buff that scales you to other players' level. So if you level but you don't get more gear, effectively your character just got weaker. So be sure as you're leveling up to constantly replace the gear that you're wearing so that your character doesn't start getting weaker on you. And the most important item to stay on top of is your weapon. Improving the quality of your weapon or finding a better weapon from time to time is very important to make sure your character continues to do some decent damage as you level. Next, let's talk about respecking, what you can respec in-game. And the answer is almost everything. Everything that's important, really. So your attribute points that you invested, you can respec those anytime you want for a fairly negligible fee. Your abilities that you leveled up and you chose, and the morphs that you took therein, you can change these at any time. All you have to do is come up to these shrines. You come to the Shrine of Ariel, and that'll allow you to change your attributes, 3,200 gold, which in the grand scheme of things is next to nothing. If you go to the Shrine of Stendarr, right here, interact with that, you can choose to change your skills outright or just change the morphs for significantly less. So if you can get away with just doing the morphs, do that, because as you can see here, it's almost 1/10 the cost. Now, if you're new, the cost for respecking goes up for every skill point you have. Now, I have a ton of skill points on this character. In fact, I have every single Skyshard in the game. So I've got tons of skill points, which is why it costs 20,000 gold to respec my skills, which is obscene. But at my point in the game, it's also not that big of a deal. Whereas my morphs, I mean, this is nothing. Okay, so if we chose to do morphs, you can see here this menu comes up and I can choose, I don't want this morph, I can upgrade Blast Bones to the other morph. Boom, and I would take that one instead. It's that easy to change. You just come in here, you pick the skills you want to take your point out of. See, I've got skill points 8, put it into this one. Now I've got 7, I can take one out of here and put it somewhere else. But I can never take the base skill out because I'm in the morphs menu. All I can do is unmorph back to the base version and then put that point somewhere else. I can't take points out of passives in the morph menu. But if I went to skills, if we click the skills button, we can take points all the way out of passives, take them all the way down to 0. We can take these all the way down to 0. We can take all those points out. The points are coming back and I could choose to invest them somewhere else if I wanted. But as you can see, it's incredibly easy to respec. You just come up to one of these shrines and boom, you can be done respecking in a matter of seconds. And while I'm here, you could also talk to this priest is always next to the respec shrines. And this is where you come to get cured from being a vampire or a werewolf if you decide you don't want to be one. It's just as simple. You just talk to him, tell him you've been infected, and you tell him, I'll pay you 69 gold, giggity, to have myself cleansed of this filthy disease that I have. As you can see, this game is very fluid. It's not trying to lock you into a decision forever. It's quite the opposite. It encourages you to experiment, to try things out, and to mix it up if you don't love what you've decided to do in the first place. Now, I've talked about Skyshards a moment ago. Skyshards are littered all over the game. There's something like 16 Skyshards in every single zone. As you can see here in your map completion grid on the left of your map over here, 16 Skyshards in every zone. Every 3 Skyshards that you go and pick up will give you a skill point to spend in your skill point and passive menu. So you'll go running around grabbing these. If you ever see one, be sure to grab it. And this might be the most useful add-on in the entire game. It's called Map Pins. The one I'm using is called Map Pins, and it puts these on the map for me. Otherwise, these won't show up on your map. You'll have to find them randomly while running around this incredibly massive world, which frankly is nearly impossible to do on your own without looking up the answer anyway. Yeah, you're going to run into some randomly on accident, but there's a lot of them that are tucked away in places you probably wouldn't have looked into, or places that you would have never visited on your own. So when it comes to finding these things, be sure to consider checking out one of those add-ons. Next, let's talk about guilds. There's two types of guilds in Elder Scrolls Online. There's the guilds that you're usually familiar with. It's like you and a group of your friends and you form a guild and you do dungeons together and you do quests together and you do trials or raids together, right? That's like your normal human interaction guild. And then there's also another type of guild, which is a skill line and a passive line. And this is more your RP guilds, right? These are guild lines you can pick up by doing quests, by interacting with the game, and they will give you access to various passives and abilities that you won't have if you don't go pick up those guilds. You can join as many NPC guilds as you want. You can join every single one of them that's in the game if you please. In fact, I have them all listed right here. The Dark Brotherhood, the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Psijic Order, the Thieves Guild, and the Undaunted Guild. Stamina Toons are almost always going to have the Fighters Guild and the Undaunted Guild, whereas Magicka Toons are almost always going to have the Mages Guild, the Psijic Order, and the Undaunted Guild. These are all very useful to the Magicka Toons. Tanks are always going to have Undaunted, and sometimes they'll have Mages, and sometimes they'll have Psijic. And healers will also go with Undaunted. You can see everybody gets Undaunted. We'll talk about that a little bit later. It's very important. In fact, why don't I just go into that now? We'll dip into why each of these guilds is important. The Dark Brotherhood and the Thieves Guild are RP guilds. You'll find almost no use for these passives in group content. That's Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild. They're incredibly fun, and there's some fun passives in there, but as far as dungeons and trials go, your raid content, they're not going to provide anything for you there. Then there's your Fighters Guild. This is the one that I mentioned is great for stamina toons because it's got some incredible abilities in here, some good buffs, some great ultimates, and some fantastic passives. There's 3 guilds I recommend you join on every single toon. That's the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, and the Undaunted Guild. Even though your stamina toon is probably never going to use Mages Guild abilities, this first passive, Persuasive Will, is great when you're questing. It opens up dialogue options that you wouldn't have had. It says allows you to persuade NPCs in conversation. Same with the Fighters Guild. It's got that intimidating presence, which is going to allow you to intimidate NPCs, right? So it doesn't matter what you are, that first passive in those 2 trees is nice when you're going around questing, and sometimes you'll get the option to just bypass some trivial part of the quest. You can instead intimidate the NPC. And then Undaunted, everybody takes Undaunted because in here you get resources back for grabbing Synergies, which everybody needs. And then you also increase your max health, stamina, and magicka pools by having this passive down here. And then last you have the Psijic Order, which provides some unique abilities. Some of these are really good abilities and used in a lot of builds. Technically, you could make a build without any of these and it would be fine, but almost every build would be improved by utilizing some of these. Now back to your player guilds real quick. Player guilds can have up to 500 members and you can be in up to 5 player guilds at once. The reason this game lets you be in 5 guilds is because you also have to be in a trading guild in order to sell gear and items you find to other players. So what it does is it gives you multiple slots, so you can have any combination of raiding guilds, dungeon guilds, trading guilds that you want to get the most out of the game that you want to get out of it. If you like doing more raiding, join more raiding guilds. If you like doing more trading, join more trading guilds. If you want to RP, join an RP guild, right? Play it in the way that suits you. And if you're new to the game and you're looking for a guild, be sure to hit me up. We're always accepting new members. Just swing by my Twitch stream sometime and I'll get you in. Next, let's talk about one of the newer skill lines in the game, the Antiquities system. It came with excavation and scrying. Antiquities is a 3-step process. First, you find a lead. And when you find a lead, it shows up here in your lead list. And it says you can go dig this up somewhere, right? So in this current zone, I could choose to open this menu, which is in my journal. And then I click the Antiquities tab here. And I could say, hey, I want to go dig this up. And then scrying begins. This is what is referred to as scrying. I've got a guide on all of this stuff Don't worry if you feel overwhelmed. I've got a guide just for this process. I won't go into too much detail now because I don't want to overwhelm you. But when you get to scrying in the game, be sure to check out my guide for it. Basically, it's a mini game that you use to unlock abilities. So once you complete a scry, it's going to show you on the map somewhere. It's going to say go here and dig or excavate, right? So that's where the second skill line comes in, excavating. So like I said, it's a 3-step process. So you find the lead and then you scry it. And when you scry it, it's going to narrow down its location in the world. And when you get to that location on your map, you've got excavating, which is going to allow you to dig it out of the ground. Passives here are going to make it easier to do so. It's a nice little mini game. It's a lot of fun, but most importantly, the stuff that you can dig out of the ground is amazing. You can get mythic items. These are one-piece set items, right? They're very unique in this game. No other sets give you a complete bonus or only wearing one items. That's unique to the mythic items. So they're very powerful, but you can only equip one mythic item at a time. I highly recommend, for instance, the Ring of the Pale Order is a fantastic mythic item. As I'm showing you here, it restores 18% of the damage you deal as health. So basically, it's giving you life leech or life steal. It gives you life every time you hit the enemy based on how much damage you're doing to them. Very powerful for solo content, and it's not that hard to get. It takes a few hours of participating in the Antiquities games, and then boom, you dig up all the leads and you assemble this thing and you have a very powerful mythic item. Again, all the guides for this are on the website at eso.justloot.com. All right, so ESO has a very unique feature known as our front bar and our back bar. We've got our front bar weapon, which is going to have, sometimes you'll put like a maul on the front bar, and then sometimes you'll put a bow on the back bar. Or in PvP, it's very common to put like a two-hander on the front bar, and then to have a sword and a shield on the back bar. So you have the two-hander when you want to go on the offense, and you have a sword and a shield when you need to turtle and go on the defense and try to survive because you're getting attacked on all sides. Depending on what type of content you're doing, you're going to have a different combination of weapons here. The important thing to know about this is that when you do get to endgame content, you will be using both bars very fluidly. You'll be switching back as if they're an extension of your body. You'll go back to grab one ability, and then you'll come to the front bar to use another, and then you might switch back to use one of those abilities, and it all becomes second nature to you. When you first start playing, you're going to feel like all thumbs as you try to learn how to use abilities from two different bars. It's going to feel very awkward, but don't worry, that phase will pass, and soon you won't even be thinking about the fact that you're doing it. The main thing to note about front bar and back bar, without going into too much detail, is that anything that's buffing the front bar only buffs the front bar. And anything that's buffing the back bar only buffs the back bar. For instance, this ability says, while slotted, your damage done is increased by 3%. Now, that's only true while I'm on this bar. If I was on the front bar and that's not there anymore, that I no longer get that 3% buff, okay? So just remember, only the weapon that's out and the abilities that are showing are giving you those buffs. Now, if you put a buff on and you switch bars, you have that buff. But if it's a buff that specifically says, hey, just because this is slotted, you're getting this buff, that only applies while you're on that bar. And then the other thing to note is that if you're wearing a 5-piece set, right? And this is going to kind of lead us into our next topic, sets in Elder Scrolls Online. What does a typical loadout look like? 90% of loadouts in Elder Scrolls Online consist of this. 2 5-piece sets, right? 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, right? If you're using a two-handed weapon, that counts as 2 pieces of a set, or you could be wearing 1 and 1, 2 one-handers, and that's 2 pieces of a set. The thing that you just need to know is that it's going to add up to 5 pieces, right? And then you've got 5 more pieces up here, your chest, your belt, your boots, your pants, and your gloves. This is another 5-piece set. So there's 1 5-piece set, and there's 2 5-piece sets, right? You've got a total of 2 5-piece sets on. And then the third thing you usually wear is a monster set. A monster set is called a monster set because it's named after the monster that drops the helmet for that set. Every dungeon in the game has its own monster set. And so, for instance, this is Balorg's mask. It's a helmet fashioned to look like Balorg. He's one of the bosses in the game. And it's got a 2-set bonus, a very, very powerful 2-set bonus. So most builds will run one of these monster sets because the 2-piece bonus is very powerful and it fills out nicely, right? You've got 5, and then you've got 2 pieces left, which is perfect for the monster set. Boom, you slot that on. The back bar is typically going to be either what you're wearing on the front bar, so that when you switch back, you still have that 5-piece set. Now notice, if I take this item off, right? If I take this item off, right? I have 5 pieces, I'm on the front bar. I switch over to the back bar. Now I only have 4 because I took this off, right? So if I took this off too, and I swap to the back bar, now I've only got 3 pieces of that set. So like I said before, when you switch to the back bar, you lose the bonuses that you got for wearing the front bar. So you have to have that set on the back bar if you want that bonus while you're on the back bar. Okay, so then I would put Eternal Vigor on the back bar if I wanted to have Eternal Vigor on front and back. Arena weapons are very commonly slotted on either the front or the back bars. So what happens is you lose your 5-piece bonus briefly to take advantage of a 2-piece bonus on the back bar. This will all start to make a lot more sense, but the important takeaway here is that what you're essentially doing is you're wearing 5 pieces of one set, you're wearing 5 pieces of another set, and then you're wearing a monster set. And some combination of gear and your weapons down here. Typically the back and the front bar are the same thing until you do an arena and get an arena weapon, and then you slot that in the back bar. Now note that you could actually wear, like I could wear a Ring of the Eternal Vigor boots, and I could wear my New Moon Acolyte on the ring. And I would still have New Moon Acolyte 5 pieces, right? Because I would have 5 pieces of New Moon. You don't have to wear them in these slots. You could mix and match. This chest piece could be my Eternal Vigor, and then this ring could be New Moon Acolyte. I could swap those, no problem. It's not a big deal. Now that being said, while you can have an like mix and match any 5 pieces, so long as you're wearing 5 of each, you get the bonus. But it is beneficial to try to stay consistent, right? So what we typically do is we try to get 5 of the body pieces, and then we try to combine that with 5 of another set wearing jewelry and weapon. Why do we do this? This makes it easier to mix and match sets down the road. So when you want to upgrade a set, maybe you want to swap this Eternal Vigor out for another set, boom, you put on those same 5 pieces and it's a clean switch. You've just changed sets without breaking one of them. And if you want to change New Moon Acolyte, you know that you just have these pieces in your inventory. And all of the sets that you might put on your body are always these 5 pieces. It means you can easily switch between sets anytime you want to. It just makes for a nice, clean experience for yourself. And then you can have an add-on like this, like it's called Dressing Room. And I can click any one of these buttons and I'll load a different combination of gear and skills that's more suited to that situation if I want to. All right, next up, let's talk about your mounts. Mounts are a mobility tool in this game, just like you would expect them to be. However, they have within them 180 different upgrades that you can upgrade, right? Well, really, it's 3 upgrades that you can upgrade 60 times a piece. So if we talk to the stable master here, view stable, we can upgrade our speed 60 times. We can upgrade our stamina 60 times, and we can upgrade our carry capacity 60 times. Your carry capacity is just an extension of your character's inventory. My character can hold 210 things at a time. 60 of those things can be held because I have maxed out my carry capacity on my mount. Stamina just allows you to take more hits from things as you're riding without being knocked off your mount. Your carry capacity increases how much you can carry, and your speed, of course, increases how fast your mount moves. You can upgrade your mount once every 20 hours. So basically what this amounts to is you can upgrade it once a day. So if you do it every day, it's going to take 180 days. One strategy is if you know you're going to be making a few characters down the line, you can make them up front and start upgrading those mounts every day to kind of get ahead on their move speed, because this move speed, when it's level 0, it can be quite painfully slow. Especially once you've gotten used to the 60% move speed of your main character's mount, it can be tough to transition to a new character and be moving like a snail. So, you know, you can get ahead of that. If you know what you're going to make next, go ahead and make it now, and then just log into it once a day, upgrade your mount speed, just so that when you do eventually play it, it's moving at a good clip. You can find these guys by looking for the stable master on the map. Sometimes it's going to be a horse. Sometimes it might be next to something else, and so you'll actually have to look for the word stable master to pop up when you're hovering over the various symbols in a town. But he will be in every major city. Next up, let's talk about the banker. The banker looks like this. It's a little treasure chest on your map, and it's a place where you can store items, right? So your character can only hold 210 at most items. So what do you do with the rest of the stuff? Well, you store it in your bank. The nice thing about the bank is that all of your characters can access your bank. So if you put it in there on one character, any character can grab it at any time. So very few items, almost nothing in this game is character bound. Everything is account bound once you've equipped it. The only items in this game that are character bound are level up rewards. And that's to stop you from abusing the leveling up reward system. So you don't just keep creating new characters. You get the level up rewards to pass off to a single alt, right? So only level up rewards are character bound. Everything else is account bound, which means you can put it in the bank and you can hand it to another character. Any piece of gear, any item you find, it'll only ever be account bound, okay? And so what that looks like when you interact with the bank, you pull up this screen, right? And you can withdraw from your bank any of your items. It looks a lot like your own inventory. And you can also choose to deposit items from your inventory in there. You could also choose to deposit currency or withdraw currencies. It works exactly like you would think a bank would. So once you actually head into one of these banker areas and you talk to the banking NPC, and it brings up this menu right here. You've got Guild Bank. If you're in a guild, you can see the items in the bank if you have permission to see those items. You may or may not be able to withdraw from there as well, depending on what permissions you have. Next, you have Guild Store. This is going to come in handy if you're in a trading guild. If your guild has a guild trader somewhere on the map, and not all guilds do. Most guilds, in fact, do not have a guild trader. So if you list something on the guild store and you do not have a guild trader, only the people in your guild can see that, and only they can buy it. If you're in a guild with a guild trader and you list it in the guild store, everybody in the game has an opportunity to purchase that item. So if you're looking to sell items to other players, it's very important to look for a guild with a guild trader. You can do that, by the way, by using the Guild Finder tool. Just press G to open up your guild menu, or whatever that button is on console, or click on this tabard here in the menu system if you're on console. And then click this and choose Guild Finder. Once you're here, you can search for various types of guilds: trading, PvE, role-playing, social, PvP, questing, crafting, right? So if you wanted to sell stuff, you'd browse the trading guild. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about, because it's incredibly important in MMOs to look good. Some would say it's the most important thing. So at the outfit stations, you can change your look. You look for one of these stations here. There's some of them out in the wild, or there's sometimes in a guild member's house or a friend's house. Look for this little outfit station. You come and you interact with it. And at the outfit station, you can change your dyes on your gear. You can change it to just about any color you can think of, so long as you've unlocked that color in the game. Every one of these dyes has been unlocked through various types of content in the game. The more you play and the more you do, the more colors you will unlock. You can see that even I, with thousands of hours in this game, still have some things that I haven't unlocked because they just happen to require random achievements that I've never gone after. All that to say, you've got tons of options when it comes to colors. Next, in the outfit station, you can change the styles of your gear. Okay, so I'm going to reset my colors so I don't look total mess. And I'm going to start randomizing my head, my chest, my shoulders, right? There are so many, right? You can collect so many motifs. I've got so many unlocked and so many that I still don't have, right? So many. This game is one of the best as far as customizing what your character looks like goes. You will just have almost endless options because of the just sheer quantity of different styles that you can equip on your character to make your character look like anything you want, right? So what it's doing right now is it's throwing on random sets, and there's going to be a lot of hideous combinations because I'm just telling it to randomly grab various things in the game from my entire catalog of items here, okay? In order to unlock these styles, what you have to do is find them in the game. They're called motif pages or style pages, and you can unlock them by participating in various types of content. Motifs drop in dungeons and trials. and also can be earned as a reward for daily quests. So there's tons of ways to earn within the game, tons of different styles. And it's one of my favorite things about ESO. And of course, you can also change the appearance of your weapon. Change it to all sorts of things if you would like. Tons of options here, whatever your heart desires. All right, traveling. How do you travel in Elder Scrolls Online? Well, it's actually quite convenient to get around, especially after you've been somewhere before. There's these things called Wayshrines all over the world. And if I hover over this Wayshrine, you can see that there's a gold cost attached to it. 718, 16, 14, and it's continually going down. Basically, this will go all the way down to 164. For me, the price varies depending on your level. But it maxes out at about 1,000 gold. And if you try to teleport back to back, it's going to cost that max cost. If you don't teleport right next to each other, then it goes down to a minimal fee of 164. So basically, you can teleport anywhere at any time for a very negligible cost. And if you just happen to teleport once before, it's going to sting just a little bit, being 1,000 gold. But all you have to do is open up your map, go to the zone you want to go to, and then click on the shrine you want to go to. And you can teleport there instantly, anytime. And it's going to say, hey, are you sure this is going to cost you this much gold? Now, alternatively, I'm going to teleport to this one as an example. And I'm going to show you something else about fast travel in Elder Scrolls Online. All right, so now if I open up the map and I wanted to teleport somewhere else, it's like, boom, 1,000 gold. Holy cow, right? Because I just used instant teleport. Alternatively, what I could do is, if I'm feeling ambitious or if I'm feeling maybe a little less lazy than normal, I can run over here and interact with the shrine direct. Now I can teleport anywhere in the game for free. So for you conscious spenders out there, you could do this. You could just run to any shrine in the game and then teleport anywhere that you've already unlocked for free. No matter how recently you teleported. This is always free if you go from one shrine to another. The only time you have to pay is if you leave the shrine and you're anywhere else and you want to teleport somewhere. Yeah. So it's always free if you're using the shrine. Very important to know. A lot of players don't realize that until they've spent thousands and thousands of gold teleporting around the world, not realizing that if they had just run up to the shrine, interacted with it, they could have gone for free. So there you go. All right, next, let's talk about group content for a bit. There's multiple types of group content in the game. There are dungeons, which are 4-man content. There are trials, which are this game's version of raids, and those are 12-man. And then there's arenas. There's 2 different types of arenas. There's the group arenas, which are 4-person arenas, and then there's also solo arenas, which are solo arenas. So in order to queue up for a dungeon, all you do is press P and then you click on the dungeon finder. Or you click on this symbol up here, the group symbol. So once you've got this open, click on dungeon finder and then queue up for a random normal dungeon. Or if you would like to queue up for a specific dungeon, maybe you're looking for a set and you know it drops in a specific dungeon, you can choose to do so. You can say, hey, I want to go specifically to City of Ash, right? So then you can come to City of Ash, click that, and then you say join queue. After it finds the other 3 members of the party, or however many you're missing, it'll throw you into that dungeon with those people, and you guys will go spelunking through. There's multiple difficulty levels for content, okay? There's your base game dungeons, which you can do at level 10. Then there's your DLC dungeons, which start right here, Bloodroot Forge, okay? See how we get this alphabetical list that starts right here? Starting with Bloodroot Forge. This is the first DLC dungeon, and everything below it is a DLC dungeon. That means it was added to the game later through a DLC, and the DLC dungeons are significantly harder than everything above them, every non-DLC dungeon. So you are not allowed to join these dungeons until level 45. At level 50, you unlock what is known as veteran content. Veteran dungeons are the same as the normal dungeons, but harder. The loot that drops is the exact same, but it's a higher quality level. So instead of dropping blue, it's going to drop purple. Now, if you're just farming gear, it's still better to farm it most times in normal and then upgrade it to purple yourself, which is something that you can do. And we will get into that once we get to crafting. But just know, you can farm all your gear in normal. You don't need to do it in veteran. And when it comes to dungeon gear, it makes no difference. So the thing about veteran content is it unlocks at 50, but I really highly advise against doing it until you are at least 160. The reason I say 160 is because at 160, you go and you farm your gear, your max level gear. Your gear stops getting better at level 160. That is the max level for gear. So gear always drops at your level. If you're level 50, it drops at level 50. If you're level 2, it drops at level 2. And if you're level 160, it drops at 160. But if you're at level 700, it drops at 160. 160 is the gear cap. So that's why at 160, that's when you start farming for all of your end game gear, your best in slot gear, because it's as good as it's ever going to be for you. As you can see here, if you look at my character's armor, I'm wearing Balor's Mask. It is level 50 and champion level 160. If it has a CP level attached to it, it's always going to be 50, by the way. It can't be level 40 CP 160. That's not a thing. It's always going to be 50, 160. So the level 50 there is very redundant and totally unnecessary. Once you've got your level 160 5-piece sets, that's when you start jumping into veteran content. And you'll come here, and this is where you will get your monster helmet, right? Because monster helmets only drop in veteran. So you have to come here to get that monster helmet, and you will definitely notice a step up in the difficulty. Standing in the red is actually going to hurt now. Standing in forecasted damage abilities is going to be fatal oftentimes. Whereas in normal, if you stand in the forecasted ability, it tickles you. In veteran, it's no longer a warning, it's a death threat, okay? It's a step up in the enemy's damage, it's a step up in their life, so you've got to do more damage, and you're going to take more damage if they hit. Likewise, Elder Scrolls Online has trials located throughout. So there's different trials all throughout the game. There's Ethereal Archives, Helroth Citadel, Sanctum Ophidia, then you've got Maw of Lorcage, Halls of Fabrication, Clockwork City, Cloud Rest, Sunspire, and Kind's Aegis so far. And that's all of the raids in this game. This is 12-man content, which means you typically go in there with about 2 tanks, 8 damage dealers, and 2 healers for a total of 12 players. They require a lot of coordination, especially on veteran. And just like the dungeons, the DLC trials are much harder than the non-DLC trials that came before them. But normal trials in general are really a pushover. So don't be afraid to jump into normal trials at 160. If your build you're following suggests wearing a trial set, go ahead and go get it at 160. Go into the normal trial and get that trial set. Normal trials are easier than veteran dungeons. I'll say that one more time. Normal trials are easier than veteran dungeons. If you're going into veteran dungeons, you're more than ready to go into normal trials. Typically, I recommend people be 160 before going into normal trials. That way, the gear that you collect in there is good forever. If you go in there at 150 or level 40 and you get a trial set, it's going to be completely irrelevant when you hit 160. You're going to have to go farm it all over again. And so there's not much point in getting it in advance. Just wait till you're 160, then go jump into the normal trials and get your gear, and it'll be good forever. Now, unlike dungeons, there is no trial finder currently, although I wouldn't be surprised if they added some kind of normal trial finder down the road. But presently, the only way to get into a trial is to form a group with your peers, or to go to a zone called Craglorn. This one here on the map, okay, it's right here in the middle. You go there, it's called Craglorn, and you stand here in Belkarth or anywhere in the zone, and this is the zone where trial groups are formed, where people are constantly talking in zone chat about which trial they're making a group for. And then you just whisper them and say, hey, I'm a DPS looking to do that trial, and they'll send you an invite. If it's a normal trial, there are no requirements usually. As long as you're 160, they're not going to have a problem with you going. Now, if you're trying to get into a veteran trial, they might have some questions for you to make sure that you're ready for that type of content, because veteran trials can be quite difficult. If you really plan on jumping into the trial scene and doing lots of raids in this game, I highly recommend that you join a trial guild, a guild that's focus is doing that kind of content. You'll have a much better time this way, especially if you find yourself going to Belkarth all the time, going to Craglorn to look for groups. Just join a guild that's doing them every day. You know, they'll have a consistent roster and sign up sheets for you to, you know, join and do them much easier than coming here to look for pugs all the time. And also the pug experience, as you may be aware, can be sometimes a great experience and sometimes the worst experience. So, you know, results may vary when it comes to joining a group with a bunch of random strangers. Last but not least, we've got the arenas that I mentioned, such as Black Rose Prison. This is just 4-man content that is not a dungeon. It's an arena, which means you stand in an arena and then waves of enemies spawn and you have to kill them before they kill you. In each of these arenas, there's 5 different arenas or 10 different arenas that you actually move your way through. So you'll beat all the enemies to death in one arena, and then you'll step into the next one and you'll beat the waves that come at you in that one, and then you'll step into the next one, and so on. And each one usually concludes with some kind of a boss fight. Arenas are a ton of fun, and they're a source of great and powerful weapons, so I highly recommend diving into these when you're ready. Just like the rest of the content in the game, normal arenas are very easy to do, especially once you have your gear, your 5-piece sets. You're ready to jump into these things and start having fun. Don't be afraid of them. Now, veteran arenas can be incredibly challenging. Black Rose Prison here that I'm looking at is one of the most difficult pieces of 4-man content, if not the most difficult piece of 4-man content in the game presently. The difficulty of these things definitely goes from very easy to very hard. Now that we've talked about the fact that you can do normal and you can do veteran trials and normal and veteran arenas, what does that mean for you? Why would you do a normal arena, or instead, why would you do a veteran if normal's so much easier? Well, the reason is Perfected Gear. So when it comes to arenas and trials, they drop perfected items, okay? So perfected items will have a second stat on their last bonus, right? So if it's a 2-piece set, it'll have 2 2-piece stats, right? So this perfected dagger has 103 stamina recovery, and dealing damage with Blade Cloak grants you Spectral Cloak for 2 seconds, right? It's got 2 stats there. If this was the non-perfected version, it would not have that stamina recovery stat. So effectively, because we ran it on veteran, I got the perfected version of the item, which means it gets an extra stat. So perfected can be quite handy. Now, typically the perfected version is only a very, very small and insignificant bit better than the non-perfected version, because they are trying to prevent too much power creep, but it is a little bit better. And if you're sweaty and you want your character to be the best that it can be, you'll eventually go and grab these things, even if they're only going to increase your damage output by maybe 1% or 2%. Dungeons, however, and then to circle back to the dungeons, just for clarification, dungeons do not drop perfected gear. Only trials and arenas drop perfected gear when you do them on veteran. Dungeons just drop purple instead of blue. Some of you guys are PvPers, so let's quickly touch on PvP. You've got 3 forms of PvP. You've got the Battlegrounds here in the queue system, right? You can click on the group content and go to the Battlegrounds, and you can join a queue for Battlegrounds. So you can either search for random Battlegrounds, or you can search for solo. If you're by yourself, I highly recommend the solo random battleground so that you don't get paired up by yourself against sweaty pre-mades that are going around just stomping people that happen to wander into the Battlegrounds by themselves. You might have a much better experience here in the solo queue if you're a solo player. And that's the Battlegrounds. Battlegrounds are 3 teams of 4 battling it out against one another in various types of modes. It's deathmatch, where everybody's killing each other. There's capture the flag modes, where each team has to try to capture the flags on the map, and the first team to 500 points wins. So Battlegrounds is 4v4v4 instant respawn. If you want constant action, constant battle with no downtime in between your deaths, Battlegrounds is where you want to go. Now, if you want large scale open world PvP where it's dozens against dozens, you're going to want to go to Cyrodiil. That's this zone right here in the middle of the map. Dead center, it's called Cyrodiil. And in Cyrodiil, there are keeps and castles and walls, and it's large battles where it's large forces attacking large forces using catapults and siege weaponry, and they're trying to knock down siege doors. How do you participate in this? What you do is you press L on your keyboard, or you click the Alliance War button up here at the top of your screen, and you choose the mode you want to go into. If you're below 50, you'll go into the below 50 one. If you're above 50, then you've got a few options. You've got Alliance Locked, or CP and a no CP. Pick the one that sounds the most appealing to you, and jump on into the combat. Once you get into these zones, look for a party, type in zone chat, say, hey, I'm looking for a group, and just say that every once in a while you go spelunking. Head towards these points of interest. You'll see this icon that looks like it's exploding, that means there's people attacking, and you can see who's attacking. So if you're Ebonheart Pact, the red, and it says Ebonheart Pact is attacking this, you can, spawn here, teleport to this one, and then run down here. It's the basics of this area are you can teleport to any heap that there's a line attached to, right? So we could teleport all the way to here from anywhere in here, but we could not teleport to, let's say red owned this one over here. We couldn't teleport to it because there's no red line connecting to that, okay? So if you wanted to get over here, man, it is a long run. Cyrodiil is massive, so get ready for some long horse rides, especially if your mount speed is not upgraded. I highly recommend getting your mount speed upgraded as soon as possible, especially if you're going to be running around in Cyrodiil. It's going to make a big difference for you. This is where you go for that large scale battle. Okay, you want to go to Cyrodiil. Now, there's one type of PvP that falls in between the instant and constant action of small scale battle in the Battlegrounds and the somewhat intermittent action and large scale where it's dozens versus dozens instead of 4v4. There's something in between the two, and that's here. In the middle of Cyrodiil, it's called Imperial City. Now, just like Cyrodiil, you get to this by pressing L or clicking Alliance War and clicking on Imperial City. Right, you open this up and you click on the one you want to go to. Just double click it and it'll jump you in there. If you have champion points, I highly recommend going into the CP Imperial City, because if you go into no CP Imperial City, it's a PvE zone, right? It's a PvE zone where you can PvP. So there's a lot of PvE mobs running around, and they're very hard to kill without your champion points. Each fight takes significantly longer. If you have CP, take advantage of that, go into CP Imperial City. Now, if you're really low CP, like you have 10 or 20 or 100 CP or 200 CP, yeah, you might want to stick into no CP just because you don't want to run into an 8-10 player and have him demolish you. Imperial City has a combination of small scale and medium scale battle. There's 1v1s and there's also going to be 1v10s in here. Sometimes you run into a group of 10 or 12. And sometimes you run into one other lone wanderer. You never know what you're going to get in here. So just be ready. Sometimes you're going to get zerged. Sometimes you're going to get that intimate one-on-one battle. And sometimes you're going to get something in between. You never know in here. You come here to collect Telvar. The cool thing about Imperial City is that you can either PvE, which gives you Telvar, which is a resource you can spend to buy some really cool stuff in game, or you can kill other people to steal the Telvar they've collected by PvEing. So there's a nice combination of PvEing happening and then ganking happening, where you're killing things you run by until you find a person and then you kill them and you take the Telvar they gained while they were killing things while they were looking for you. And so it's very high stakes in here. And if that's your kind of thing, then perfect. Try out Imperial City Sewers. It's worth noting that if you die, they only take half of the Telvar that you've earned. So when you spawn again in your base, you still have half your Telvar. You can deposit it at any time. Once you deposit your Telvar in your bank, if you die, you won't lose it. It's safe there. So basically what you want to do is go out, collect some Telvar, maybe kill someone, take their Telvar, then head back to your base and deposit it so that when you die, you don't lose all that hard-earned Telvar. And those are the 3 forms of PvP in Elder Scrolls Online right now. Next, let's talk briefly about the combat in Elder Scrolls Online. Combat in Elder Scrolls Online consists of blocking by holding down your block button. This is going to make it so that you take significantly less damage when something hits you, and it is a significant reduction in damage. However, every time you block, it's going to eat up a chunk of your stamina. Now, this is important because when you run out of stamina and you block, your block is not going to reduce the damage like it was before, and you very well could die. So you can see as I'm blocking this damage, my stamina bar is going down. You can also bash things, so if I see her start to channel again, I can interrupt. Boom. So I interrupted her. She stopped doing that channeling ability on this mob. And if she's doing an ability on me, I would interrupt her as well. It puts that dizzy swirl over her head, which means she's off balance. And then I can do my ability. Okay. If you heavy attack, that means hold down your attack. It's going to give you stamina back. If it's a melee weapon, it's going to give stamina back. If it's a staff and you heavy attack, right, just hold the button down. It's going to give you magicka back with a staff, stamina back with a melee weapon, stamina back if it's a bow. And that's all you really need to know about the combat basics. Everything else is going to come with time. This game is basically a game of getting your dots and your buffs up and then using your spammable while they're all ticking. And then when a dot or a buff falls off, you recast that and you go back to your spammable and continue unloading on the enemy. So synergies are a really important part of Elder Scrolls Online. You'll see I put this ability down, and this is a fairly unique ability because I can grab my own synergy, which is perfect for this lesson. But I put it down and you see right at the bottom there, it says press X to use Grave Robber. Right down here. Now what that's going to do is a few things for me, okay? When I grab that synergy, it says, you or an ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber synergy, dealing 12,000 frost damage to all the enemies in the area and healing you for the damage done. There you go. You get a 12,000 damage burst heal. You get a synergy, right? So it's a nice little bit of damage. It's a nice little heal. Every synergy has its own effect. Sometimes you grab a synergy and it buffs you. Some synergies will say it's going to make you do 25% more damage for 6 seconds. Whatever the synergy gives you, it's also going to give you this undaunted passive here called Undaunted Command. Activating a synergy gives you 4% of your max health, stamina, and magicka back. So on this character, if I grab a synergy, I get 632 health, 1,000 stamina, and 400 magicka. So if your team's constantly throwing out synergies, which healers will be doing, you can constantly grab them. And that's going to give you a bunch of your resources back. And this is going to be very important for your sustain in long combat. All right, next, let's talk about consumables. There's 2 primary consumables that you use in Elder Scrolls Online. The consumables are 1, your potions, and 2, the food that you eat. Food buffs last for roughly 2 hours. And they give your character a significant amount of either health, stamina, or magicka, or some combination thereof, right? These things are going to increase how much health, stamina, or magicka you have, and they're also oftentimes going to give you recovery of one of those or 2 of those resources so that you don't run out of them as fast. That is what food is for. It's for your sustain, and it's for your max resource value. And as we touched on earlier, your damage on damage tunes is determined in part by how large your max resource value is. So food in Elder Scrolls Online is very important. I know in some games you eat the food and it's like, oh, that's nice. It's a little bit of a buff. You know, if I have it, great. If I don't, not a big deal. No, in Elder Scrolls Online, without food, you are significantly weaker, okay? Whether you realize it or not, especially due to the sustain that is built into some foods, such as the lava foot, right? That's giving you 500 recovery of stamina every second. That's huge. That means that is the difference between you constantly being out of stamina and not, right? So if you're constantly out of stamina, maybe you need to go ahead and try a food with stamina recovery, or if you're out of magicka, take one with magicka recovery. And that's going to make all the difference in the world for you. That is one type of consumable, your food. You can only have 1 food or drink active at a time. You may not stack a food with a drink, right? Only 1 thing at a time. Then there's potions. You can use potions and food at the same time, okay? Potions are their own thing. You chug potions. These last 47 seconds when you've got the passives for them. They last like 40 seconds when you don't have the passives. And you're going to use these basically on cooldown. So anytime your potion is on cooldown in combat, you use your potion. Again, in some games, you use potions when you need resources or when you need health. Not in Elder Scrolls Online. In PvE content, you use the potion anytime you're in combat, and until that battle is over, you use the potion every time it cools down. Why? Because potions in this game aren't just there to give you resources back. If you look at what this potion is doing, it is giving us massive, massive buffs every time that we use it, right? For the entire duration of this potion, right? And the potion lasts for as long as the cooldown, so that means you can have 100% uptime on these buffs. Grants major brutality, increasing our weapon damage by 20%. Grants major savagery, increasing our critical, right? Grants major endurance, increasing our stamina recovery by 40%, while also giving us 7,500 stamina. So not only is this keeping our resources topped off, but it's turning our character into an absolute machine while the buff is active. So I can't stress this enough, and it's a mistake every single new player makes, including myself when I was new. I waited too long to to dive into what foods I should be using and what potions I should be using. I was worried about the cost of them. And get a load of this, okay? Your food lasts for 2 hours and it's going to cost you, this food costs about 94 gold. And when you're running through a dungeon that takes maybe 15 minutes to run through, maybe 30 minutes if you're in a slow group, you will find thousands of gold worth of items in that run, right? Every white item you find is worth almost this much, and you find dozens of those in one dungeon. Okay, this lasts for 2 hours, so you are always coming out ahead when you're eating food. Do not be worried about consuming food. The price is negligible for the time that it lasts, as long as you're doing something while it's active. Same with potions. Now, potions are a little more expensive. These kind of potions are a little more expensive. You can use the basic trash pots that you find off of mobs. You can buy them from guild traders for 9 gold a piece, making them trivial as well. If you're not doing hard content, you can use your basic Essence of Magicka or Essence of Stamina potions. Pull one of those up. That's what these look like, right? They're the green ones for stamina, the blue ones for magicka, and they cost 8 to 10 gold, it says, or 6 to 7 for the stamina. They're very, very cheap. And you just use these anytime you're just doing something that it doesn't require you to be spending money to get through it. You're going to get through it just fine. You know, your basic potions. And that's really all you need to know about the consumables is, hey, you know, don't underestimate how incredibly necessary and effective these are. If you're running around as a new player and you're constantly out of resources, you're not using these right. Once you start using the right food and once you start chugging those potions, your sustain problems are going to largely go away. All right. Next, let's talk about the Transmute Station, because the Transmute Station is more important than it's ever been. I mean, it's an amazing tool to begin with, and just recently it was made more amazing. And I'm going to talk about why. At the Transmute Station, so out in the world, you're going to pick up all kinds of gear, and it's going to drop however it drops, right? We're used to gear dropping with various stats, sometimes good, sometimes not. And in a lot of games, what you have to do is you have to basically go reform that gear over and over until it drops right. Well, in Elder Scrolls Online, we have the Transmute Station, where, let's say I have this Ruby Ash Inferno Staff, right? This gold Ruby Ash Inferno Staff. I can put this in here, and instead of the infused trait that it has, I can tell it that I want it to be training. And then I can spend 50 of my transmute crystals to change that trait. So this is going to become very important for you once you start putting a set together and you start collecting pieces of gear. And you're like, oh man, I found it, but it's not in the right trait, which is what's going to happen most of the time. As a damage dealer, you're often going to say, oh man, I need to change, I need to change this armor to Divines, right? Divines is the go-to DPS trait on gear, or Bloodthirsty on your jewelry. So for damage dealers, you're almost always going to put Divines on your gear, Bloodthirsty on your jewelry. If you want to just go with that, that's going to be right 99.9% of the time. If you're a tank or a healer, it varies. Follow whatever your build says to do. So that's what the Transmute Station does. It changes these traits for you. And if you hover over them, it tells you what they do. Yeah. The trait is the second stat there. The first one is your enchantment. The second one is the trait. Okay. So if you're ever curious, which one's the trait? The trait is the second one. The first one that says something enchantment, that's going to be your enchantment. Enchantments are really easy to change. You just buy a glyph from a guild trader, or you find one on the floor, and you just apply it to the item that you want to apply it to. If it's a magicka recovery glyph, you just buy a truly superb glyph of magicka recovery, and then you apply it to your piece of jewelry that you want to apply it to. And you could do that for anytime you want for a fairly trivial cost. They're usually only a few thousand gold, not bad at all. Okay, so changing the trait is the original and primary use for the Transmute Station until Markarth. And now we can reconstruct any item that we have found and bound to our character. So in order to craft an item that you've already found before, you just click on the Reconstruct tab over here, and then you look for the set. Let's say you wanted to make Mother's Sorrow. So you click here and you choose the set you want to craft, and you just double click it, choose the quality you want to make it, choose the trait you want it to be in, right? So we'd go Gold, Divines, Robe of Mother Sorrow, and boom. If I craft it, I have that piece, and just like that, you have a new Robe of Mother Sorrow. Now, why would you craft it? What are the reasons for crafting a set of gear that you already have? There's a couple of reasons. You may want a set for one of your alts so that you don't have to transfer it between characters constantly. Or alternatively, what you could do is, see this here, it says cost 50. Now, if we're going to retransmute a piece of gear here, right, it costs 50. This one costs 51 for the Mother's Sorrow, Every piece you find reduces the cost of creating a piece of gear. So the more of the Mother Sorrow set I find and bind to my character, right, it'll fill this catalog up. And this will go all the way down to a cost of 25. So then it becomes more transmute efficient to just craft in the right trait as opposed to retransmute, right? It's half the cost when you have everything. So if your limitation is transmutes, you may want to craft it from scratch and then upgrade it to gold. Now, if you have gold jewelry, right, it's incredibly expensive to gold out a piece of jewelry. So instead of crafting it all over again and retrading it, what you may want to do when it's gold jewelry is just retrade it with your 50 transmutes, eat the cost of transmutes, save the hundreds of thousands of gold it costs to gold out a new piece of jewelry. So basically there's a give and a take to creating new pieces of gear. And if all you're doing it for is to change the trait, well, then you may want to consider based on how much it's going to cost you to do it the other way. And so that's what the Transmute Station is for. Either retrade an item or craft an item that you already own at the cost of transmutes. Now, how do you get transmutes? There's a couple of real easy ways to get transmutes in Elder Scrolls Online. One, doing a random normal dungeon. Every character can do one of these every day. And every time you do it, it's 10 transmutes per character. So if you do it on 5 characters, that's 50 transmutes per day you could earn. If you do it on 1, it's 10 transmutes per day. Random normal dungeons are incredibly easy, so it's a nice easy way to both get a good chunk of experience and some transmutes. Alternatively, if you are up for some PvP, you can go to Cyrodiil and get yourself to reward tier 1. All you have to do to get to reward tier 1 is spend, usually it takes about a half hour in Cyrodiil. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a bit more, depending on how active it is and if your side is winning the battles that you're participating in. Basically, what you do is you go and join a campaign, but before you go into that campaign, you must do this one step. You must right-click it and set it as your home. It's already my home, so it says abandon rather than set as home. You must set it as your home campaign. If you don't, you'll be in there. This bar won't move. And you'll be like, why is my bar not moving? And it should be like full by now. Well, you forgot to set it as your home most likely. Or you're inside of the campaign that you didn't set as your home. So you set something else your home, you went into the wrong one. So make sure you set the one you want to be in as your home, and then make sure you go into that one and get your AP there. Your AP is the experience you get in Cyrodiil for participating in victories and defenses and things like that. When this gets to 1, at the end of the campaign, right here, it says 17 days left, right? Now, this is the downside. There's an upside to this and a downside. The upside is it takes somewhere between a half hour and an hour to get it done, realistically. And you get 50 transmutes for doing that on one character. So it's bang for your buck. It's hard to beat, right? That's a lot of transmutes for a pretty small investment in time. But you have to wait for the campaign to be over. This campaign ends in 17 days. So you can do this, and then just, when it ends, you get a nice chunk of 50 transmutes. If you hate PvP or you don't want to wait 17 days, well, then you can always do your random dungeons. Pledges will also give you a few if you do pledges, but we'll talk about those coming up. All right. Next, let's talk about crafting stations. Every major town has all of the crafting benches in them. They look like this. Here's your clothing station. Here's your jewelry station, right? Here's your provisioning station. Although this can look like a lot of things based on where you're at. Sometimes it's a kettle. It varies. And then you've got your blacksmithing station and your woodworking station. The one thing that trips a lot of people up is when they go to craft a shield or to upgrade a shield, they want to go to the blacksmithing station. But actually in this game, we call it sword and board because your shield is made of wood. So when you want to do something with shields, you will want to come here into the woodworking station to upgrade your wooden shield. The blacksmithing station is responsible for heavy armor and weapons, melee weapons, whereas the woodworking station does staves, bows, and shields. Then all of your light and medium armor is going to be here at the clothing station. And your jewelry is going to be here at the jewelry station. The way these work is whenever you find gear out in the wild, I highly recommend you deconstruct it after you find it. If you're not going to wear it, deconstruct it. Deconstructing it is going to level up the level of that bench all the way up to a maximum of 50. Very important that you get this up to 50 and you start getting your passives. There's a lot of really powerful passives that you should learn, especially on your crafter. So make sure you deconstruct items that you find to level this up. And it's also going to do something else for you when you deconstruct items. It's going to give you materials that are going to end up here on the Refine tab. This is where you're going to go to refine any materials, and then you click on it, and I would hit Refine. And that's going to combine these raw materials that we find out in the wild that we get from deconstructing things, right? Those raw materials, we're going to refine them and turn them into materials that we can craft things with or upgrade things with. And here you can craft various things. There's the crafting tab, creation. Improvement is where we can go. If I have a purple item and I want to make it gold, I come here, I click on it, and I click on this to gold it out. Then there's lastly the research tab. Okay, so here you can, if you have an item on you and you want to learn how to retrait stuff, remember how we were retraiting things over at the Transmute Station? Well, before you can retrait something to a specific trait, you must learn how to do that. And the way you learn is to find a pair of boots with Divine's trait. And then you take it to this bench and basically you destroy that item, you consume it to learn how to craft it. So you would come here with the Divine's boots and you would say, I want to research Divines on these boots. And that would teach you how to put Divines on any pair of boots that you find, as long as they're the same weight. So like these are light boots, so I would have to find Divine's light boots. And then I could change Divine's light boots. Now, if I want to change medium or heavy, I've got to go find Divine's heavy boots and learn that. And then I'll be able to retrait Divine's medium or heavy boots. Still with me? I know this is a lot. The crafting stuff is one of the more confusing things, but it's also very simple at the same time. There's just a lot to it, but it's all very simple. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comments below. I will do my best to answer every one of your guys' questions. And then there's one very important thing that I want to add to this, right? So here's the crafting table. Every crafting table has its own passive tree. So I'm at the clothing table, right? So if I click on clothing, I have a bunch of passives that relate to this table. Tailoring is going to allow me to craft higher level things while also increasing the level of the things I find in the wild. If you don't max this out, half of the nodes you find out in the wild will appear at a lower level than you want them to. So make sure to max this out eventually. It's going to make you find higher level materials. Keen Eye is going to allow you to see nodes from a farther distance so that you can grab them. They make them glow for you, so they stand out quite a bit better when you have this passive. Outfit Hireling, up to twice a day, the Hireling will send you some mail with some materials in it. And this will happen every time you log into that character twice a day. Now, if you don't log into a character that day, the Hireling will not send the mail. So the only way this works is if you log into the character. So if you have multiple characters with this passive, in order to take advantage of it, you have to log into each of them at least once a day. Unraveling. Now, this is probably the most important passive that I want to talk about in here. Well, there's two of them that are really important, but this is one of them. This says it maximizes the chances of extracting clothing ingredients and allows the refining of the most powerful tannins from raw materials. Okay, so remember how I was talking about that refining tab? You only want to refine materials on your crafter, on the character that has this passive maxed out. Otherwise, when you refine, you're not going to get nearly as many good materials, right? So do not use the refinement tab until you've maxed this out on your character, okay? So you're going to go to your bench, you're going to hit refine, right? And you can refine all these things, and you press the button, and it's going to give you a list of materials. And if you've got that passive, these materials are going to be significantly better than if you didn't. All right, so don't waste your materials. Make sure you get this passive maxed out. Make sure you have at least one character kind of devoted to that. Get this passive and also get this passive. More than doubles the chances to improve items with tannins. This is going to reduce the cost, right? So if I want to upgrade an item from purple to gold, it costs 8 Dregwags. Dregwags is fairly expensive, and it's costing 8. If I did not have that passive maxed out, it would cost 20 Dregwags. So significant reduction in costs, right? You never want to upgrade gear or refine your materials without being on the crafter. The crafter is the one that's going to do all of that for you because it is very expensive if you do it on the wrong character. Okay, so max out this one and max out this one. For each of these lines, each of them has a passive that says extract better and upgrade improved. Okay, doubles the chances. Each one of these has that: blacksmithing, clothing, jewelry, woodworking. They all have that. It's very important to get all of that on all of them. All right, leveling. How do you level in Elder Scrolls Online? When the answer here is kind of complicated because there's no wrong way to level. I've got guides on things you need to do in each level interval. I've got guides on how to power level. And there's different ways to approach it. If you want a mind-numbing, speedy experience, there are those methods where, you know, the fastest way to level also happens to be the least fun. But you could do that if, like, that's all you want is levels. I don't recommend it. You know, so I have a guide for that if you want it. But then there's also the other ways to level where you actually get to enjoy the game along the way and also probably become quite a bit more experienced and quite a bit more prepared for the levels that you earn. So that you don't hit max level and then wonder why you're still not good at the game. Well, it's because you never played it. You just grinded out these one mobs, these ones Dolmens for 800 levels, and you really have no clue what the heck you're doing still. But you know, there's multiple ways to attack the leveling process. There's no correct way, no wrong way. One way that is a nice combination of speed and experience is going to be random normal dungeons. As you can see here, it's giving me a ton of experience. This scales with your level. So the higher level you are, the more experience it gives you. Do a random normal dungeon on at least one character a day. And if you don't hate PvP, doing a random battleground will give you that same amount of XP again. So you can double dip on these daily experience right here. Just do one dungeon, one battleground for a huge chunk of XP every day. Beyond that, you can do each dungeon, right? So every dungeon you do for the first time, there's a quest in there. And when you turn that quest in there, it gives you a chunk of XP and a skill point. So it's very important to do every dungeon at least once. It's going to give you a lot of XP. You're going to learn a lot, and it's going to give you a skill point that you can spend on skills or passives or whatever you need. That's my preferred way to level on all my new tunes. I do a lot of dungeons. Doing dungeons gives you a lot of things. It gives you Undaunted experience that levels your Undaunted guild. It gives you Fighters Guild experience leveling your Fighters Guild. It gives you experience just leveling your character. It gives you a skill point the first time you complete it. So there's lots to be gained from doing dungeons. It's a very effective way to spend your time, is to hone in on the ones you haven't completed yet. Now, if you're looking at the game without any of the add-ons I've recommended, you won't see this list over here. Don't worry, that's okay. You'll just have to keep track of that in your head, or go into your achievements menu, press J for your achievements, and then look at that specific dungeon and see which achievements you're missing. And if you've never done it on your character, you won't have the achievement for completing it. This is quite a bit more difficult to do, so I highly recommend checking out those add-ons. All right, now I'm going to briefly talk about the different types of content in Elder Scrolls Online and what kind of builds you're going to want for that content, because it's a very common question. Can I use the same build to solo with that I use in group content, or can I use my group build in PvP and in PvE? And these are all fair questions, and the answer is no. It's a hard no. You cannot use a PvP build in PvE, and you cannot use a PvE build in PvP. At least if you try to, you're going to have a bad experience in at least one, if not both of those places. PvP builds are very different than PvE builds. PvE builds are very much glass cannons. You've got the tank taking all the damage. You've got the healer healing all the damage, and your DPS, and your job is simply to do damage. Now, if you go into PvP with that build and you don't have damage mitigation abilities and you don't have self-heals, you're going to have a really bad time. And if you're wearing gear that is meant strictly to do damage and not to defend against it, and has no passive abilities attached to it that are going to aid you in surviving that onslaught, well, it's going to be tough for you. And you probably won't have very much fun. So if you're a PvPer, I highly recommend putting it together a PvP build. And then if you want to dabble in both PvP and PvE, get yourself a setup for both. It's going to be worth it. You know, wait till you're 160 so that you're only having to get this setup put together once, and then put together a set of PvP gear and some PvP skills and a PvE gear and PvE skills, right? And then just swap between the two depending on what you're doing. You will do significantly better in both venues if you do this. Now, what about solo builds? Solo builds can work okay in group content depending on the solo build and how good it is, right? Some solo builds are very much just meant depending on the creator of that solo build and what they wanted to achieve with it. it might just be meant for like questing, and it might be very much an RP build where, you know, it's a lot of fun, it's interesting and unique, but it's not ever going to put out very much damage. It's not going to be good in a group setting. And if that's the case, then that solo build won't work well in a group. I've got a lot of solo builds that put out incredible damage, both solo and group play, and you don't have to tweak them much to have them perfectly set up for group content. So be sure to check out all of my solo builds if you're interested in a solo build that also works really well in group play and is able to easily do all of the solo content in the game. No problem. Okay, so next thing we want to talk about briefly is if you're a damage dealer, you'll hear the term parse a lot. To parse, or when parsing, or I need to go parse, or have you parsed yet, right? And that simply means, did you go attack one of these dummies, like this guy right here, until it died? And when you do that, it's going to spit out a number for you, right? That tells you how much damage you did per second. You can also use an add-on like Combat Metrics, right? Pull this little up here, and it's going to tell me what my damage per second was on that little Spriggan I was fighting earlier, okay? So I did 637 damage per second because we were just standing there blocking the whole time, and then we just light attacked him, right? So really low DPS. You can do as much DPS as it's like 115,000 DPS I've seen, I think, in this game right now, right around there. Like, it's a big number, right? So 637 would be a horrible parse. So that's what people mean when they say, have you parsed? Basically, you're just finding out how much damage your build does per second. This is very important in Elder Scrolls Online because there are things called the DPS checks. And essentially what that means is there's fights where if you don't do enough damage, you won't beat it in time, and some mechanic will trigger that wipes your group. Either another wave of adds will spawn, and if you fall behind on those spawns, like eventually they'll just keep adding up until they overrun your group. Or perhaps if you don't kill the boss in time, he does a room-wide explosion that just kills the group, right? There's all kinds of DPS checks. And so it's not really a suggestion to do a certain amount of damage. Some content requires a certain amount of damage. It's not really an opinion, it's just a fact. Some content requires X amount of damage. And so what people have you do is parse. You come beat on this dummy, and he will spit out a number when it's over, and he'll say, hey, you did 60,000 DPS. And you're like, sweet, I didn't need that much. So I'm actually ahead of the game for this content that I wanted to do next. Cool. It's a good way of finding out, like, if you change an ability or you change some gear, or maybe you win and you got 50 more champion points and you're curious, hey, how am I doing now? You know, did my damage go up a lot? Well, come and parse. Or you gold out your weapon, for instance, right? You gold out your weapon. Now you're going to do quite a bit more damage when you parse than when it was blue. Okay, so that's what parsing is, and parsing is how you improve your damage. You're going to practice your rotation. The important thing about parsing is keeping your dots up and light attack weaving in between abilities. Okay, that brings us to the second important term that you're going to talk about when it comes to improving your damage, and that's light attack weaving. Light attack weaving is simply this. I use my light attack, and then I use an ability. Then I light attack, and then I use an ability. I am weaving light attacks in between my ability. Okay, that's weaving. Now, you are supposed to weave light attacks between every ability that you use in Elder Scrolls Online. That is just a hard fact the way the game is running right now, because light attacking is on a separate cooldown from your abilities. So you can only use your abilities so fast, right? You can only use them this fast, and you can only light attack so fast. But they're on separate cooldowns, so you can do both at the same time, which is why light attacking, it's free damage while you're waiting for your global cooldown on your abilities to reset. So that's what you do. You light attack and then use an ability. And in order to take advantage of the fact that they're on separate cooldowns, that's where we come into probably the most controversial term in Elder Scrolls Online, and that is animation canceling. It sounds scary, but I promise it's not scary at all. A lot of people think it's way more involved and complicated than it is, and so they basically shut down. They're like, what? I have to cancel animations? This is too much work. I hate this. I hate this game. It's impossible. Well, wait, hear me out. So what animation canceling is you're canceling the light attack animation. Okay? This animation here, see how long that is from start to finish? See, and so, and then he's done right there. His foot comes back up. It's a long animation. We cancel most of that animation That's animation canceling. The way you cancel it is you press your light attack and then your ability. Now, if you press light attack just a split second before your ability, it cancels. See how much of that animation we canceled? You see the sword hit the guy, but then he doesn't do the whole back swing and then step back into place, right? We're skipping most of the animation. That's animation canceling. So you just hit your light attack ability. Light attack ability. Now we are weaving and animation canceling just because we're hitting light attack right before the ability. So it's just a matter of rhythm. You go da-da, 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 rather than light attack, ability, light attack, ability, right? It's more of a da-da, da-da, da-da. And you get into that rhythm. It's more like a heartbeat rhythm as opposed to da, da, da. It's da-da, da-da, right? You're just canceling that light attack animation. And now you're doing something, you're getting free damage in between every ability when you would otherwise just be waiting for that ability to cool down. You get to swing your sword once in that time. So not only is that free damage, but also if we use our ultimate, okay, now look down here. I just used my ult, so my ult is at 0 charge, okay? It's at 0 charge right now. Watch what happens when I light attack the boss. It starts going up 3, 6, 9, 12, right? It starts charging my ultimate when I light attack. Now, what happens when I use an ability? It's not moving, right? So if you're not light attacking, your ult is going to go really slow. But then the second I use the light attack, there it goes. It starts going up 3 at a tick, okay? It's very important for getting your ult back fast, and ults are incredibly powerful in this game. Don't underestimate your ult and how significant it is for your damage. You want to get it back as soon as possible. Everybody does, because you want to be using that thing as often as you can. For all of those reasons stated, primarily your damage and your ult regen, and also there's a lot of more complicated things. You're going to be proccing enchants on your weapons. I'm not going to go into that yet. It's too soon for you. Once you've got all this other stuff digested and you're in the game and you're going around and you start parsing, you know, check out one of my parse videos or one of my weaving videos, or one of my guides, or just come by my stream and ask me the finer details about this kind of stuff. And we can talk about how it's going to trigger enchantments and then your procs and your weapon damage procs. And there's a lot more to it, but you don't need to know all that just yet. Just know that there is more than just the reason stated for light attacking. They're going to be very useful for your character. Now, here's another term you're going to hear people say a lot. Dolmen, or Geysers, or Dragons, or Harrowstorms. All of these things are events inside of a zone. And now these are not like holiday events or celebration events that will happen once a month in the game. These are little events that happen at these symbols on the map, okay? So in Alikir Desert, for instance, you've got Dolmen, so it looks like this. It looks like a little cyclone symbol on the map. And if you go there, you shut down the Dolmen. The lore behind it is explained in the main story. But basically, these are a great source of XP. You can go to Alikir Desert and Dolmen grind. You can go to Western Skyrim and you can Harrowstorm grind. See how it's the same symbol? Just means, hey, there's an event that happens here from time to time. And if you're here when it happens, you get a burst of XP when it ends and you get some loot. This is where you get the zone jewelry. In Southern Elsewhere and Northern Elsewhere, you've got dragons, and you'll see dragons flying around the map, little white dragons, whenever there's one around. So if you're in one of those zones, just head to the dragon, and then there'll be a large group of people killing it, hopefully. If there's not a large group of people at one of those events, it can be quite difficult to take down by yourself or with a small group. So just be prepared for that if you run into that situation. But there's almost always tons of people at all of these types of events. All right, so the next thing I want to show you real quick is let's go over the justice system in Elder Scrolls Online. It's a very simple system. If you do something illegal like steal, right? If you go around, you can see if you hover over an item that's not meant to be yours, it's somebody else's, you have the option to steal it. If you do it without being seen, you're fine. You can go fence it or what have you, and you won't be attacked by the guards. However, if one of them sees you, they will be upset. Likewise, there's certain things you can do in town that have nothing to do with stealing, nothing to do with murdering somebody in front of a guard, right? Because you can also murder people in this game, like these NPCs. You can go back behind them and you can just kill them. There's a lot of NPCs you can kill. These are quest givers. Don't think you can kill them. There's other things you could do, right? I'm a perfectly good law-abiding necromancer. This character, all I do is save the world. I save and I save and I save. But, you know, if I summon one little skeleton, you know, he flips out. Now, look at this. Over here, I've got a bounty, right? It's 277 gold. And the guard just murders me. Okay, toxic, super toxic. Now I res here. What he did was he took 277 of my gold and my bounty went away. As you can see, the guards, you can run away. They are not instant kills. They can be impossible to kill though. They've got like 10 or 20 million health. And so what you want to do is either just let them kill you and pay your fee, or run away, hide, and then this does go down slowly but surely. It will expire. Okay, this will go down. With this kind of a fee, it probably wouldn't take much more than maybe 5 or 10 minutes to go away. It's not bad, unless you kill a lot of people and you get it up into the thousands, and then, you know, yeah. So let's see, we'll let him kill me now so we can move on with the tutorial here. And again, he's going to kill me. He's going to take that 277 gold, and then boom, we're fine. It's like nothing ever happened. Everybody forgets. You don't go to jail. There's no major downside. It's a very, honestly, it's very forgiving, you know, if you get caught stealing or whatever. And so if you want to go around stealing things, feel free to. You can't necessarily sell items. You got to go fence them if you steal something. And that's when you would go to the Outlaws Refuge. And inside of the Outlaw Refuge, you see the symbol on the map. That's your Outlaws Refuge. They're all over the game in every major zone. You go there and there's a fence in there. You just talk to the fence and you tell them, hey, I want to fence some items that I stole. And they will take a finite number of items per day. You can't do it unlimited. You reach a threshold. So if you want to sell more items per day, you can come in here and upgrade the Trafficker passive in Legerdemain. Legerdemain has one of my favorite passives. It's a totally optional skill line. It's all 100% RP based, but it does have locksmith. So you can walk up to chests and you can just kick them open. You don't have to play the lockpicking minigame. You instantly open them when you interact with them. However, there is a small chance that you will fail. All right, so I found a chest so I can demonstrate for you here. This one's simple, right? So that means I have the best chance. If I press E, at the bottom it says force lock, 85% chance. If you do not have that passive, it's going to be significantly less than that. I think it'll say something like 15% chance. It's almost certain you'll fail. So if I press it, boom, I skipped the whole game and it just opened the lock immediately. And that's what that passive does. So let's talk about housing. Elder Scrolls Online has one of the most robust housing systems in any game I've ever played. Possibly the most robust housing system of any game I've played. I can't think of anything that comes close to it. You've got dummies you can put in your house to parse on. You can build literally anything you can think of. I've put a spaceship in my house just because I could. I've got, I don't know, some kind of magical mist coming out of the bottom of the rocket engines. I mean, you know, and that's just, you know, next to my house, another parse dummy here. We've got inside of the house, you can have crafting stations. You can have anything you want. I've decorated this one with lots of paintings. That's my thing. I just like shiny paintings. You can have storage coffers for additional storage space. You don't have enough room in your bank or you don't have enough in your inventory. You can get storage coffers and you can store more stuff in your house. You can have NPCs in your house, such as your own banker and your own merchant standing around. You can have NPCs that you can interact with and talk to and just kind of hang out in your house. You can make them walk around, set up your own little living situation. You can put pets, you can put everything. You can put a restaurant in your house, right? I've got like a little sushi bar that I've been making slowly but surely with my little cook bag here. This guy makes some mean crunchy rolls, okay? And it's good. It's good. It's all very good, right? The housing system in this game is incredibly robust. You can even put crafting stations. You can craft gear. You can upgrade gear. You can put the Mundus stones that I showed you earlier. I mean, there's really almost no limit to what you can put in your house. They can be quite massive and incredibly fun to fill with things that you collect along your way. You can dig up things. Almost everything you see in my house is something that I have found on my journeys in Elder Scrolls Online. A mob dropped them, or they were part of an Antiquities dig that I was participating in. just about anything you do has a chance to earn you a furnishing, and so you can keep the cooler ones that you find, maybe like stained glass or paintings or the lights that you find, or the big light up there that I've hidden, this treasure that I've got. Really, there's tons of stuff that you and put into your house and just kind of make it your own. And no two people's houses will look similar because there's just so many ways you can go with them. And for some people, it is the end game.
Next thing we're going to talk about are companions. Companions were added with Blackwood. They're NPCs that follow you around and help you out. You can put skills on them. You can put gear on them. In order to unlock companions, what you're going to need to do is go to Blackwood and then either go to Doom Vault in the north or go down to this island here in the south. To pick up Miri, come here and accept the quest that she has. She'll be standing right here. And likewise, Bastion will be standing down here and you'll pick him up and do a quest with him. You can do both of them or one or the other. It's up to you. And then you can summon them at any time by going into your collections menu, going to your allies, and choosing the companion that you want to summon. Once you have the companion unlocked, all you have to do is talk to them and you can open up their menu. In here, you can check out your reputation with them. The better your reputation, the more quests that you can unlock to discover more of their story. You can also access their equipment menu here and you can put gear on them. If you have gear in your inventory that they can wear, it'll show up here and you can drag it over here and put it on your companion. Your companion can only wear gear that is specifically meant for companions. You cannot wear their gear and they cannot wear yours. If you click on the skills menu here at the top, you'll be able to choose which skills your companion has slotted. The higher level your companion, the more skills they'll be able to have at one time. Here you see the next skill will unlock at level 2, then 7, then 12, and then last but not least, level 20. You get your ultimate. Your companion will prioritize skills that are on the left. So the number 1 skill will get used the most, the number 2 next most, number 3, 4, 5, and so on. Companion abilities are based on a cooldown and priority system, so if it's off cooldown and it has the highest priority, it will be cast. So this ability has an 8-second cooldown, so it'll be cast pretty much every 8 seconds. While it's on cooldown, it will cast ability number 2, and if that's on cooldown as well, it'll cast ability number 3, and so on. If you want your character to be a healer, then you're going to put heals towards the front so that it prioritizes healing over doing other things. Likewise, if you want it to be a tank, you're going to prioritize tank abilities. So have fun with your companion. Turn it into an archer or a mage or a tank or a healer. Have fun with it and take it with you on your adventures. You cannot take your companion into solo arenas with you, and you can only have it in a dungeon if your party only has 3 people. A companion takes up the slot of a player, so there can only be 4 players in a dungeon, so that would be 3 players and 1 companion, or 2 players and 2 companions. And if another player joins, it will unsummon that companion automatically. Companions can never prevent another player from joining a dungeon. Companions are intentionally weak so that they don't replace other human players, so don't expect them to do a hard carry in any group content. They're more of a hey, this is better than nothing option, and a friend to bring with you while you travel through Tamriel. The next system that was added with Blackwood is the Seals of Endeavor. This is basically a way to purchase Crown Crate items with an in-game currency. In other words, you don't have to spend real-life cash in order to get these items anymore. It used to be that you had to purchase loot boxes with real money, and then you had a chance at getting something like a Radiant Apex mount, like this gorgeous mount right here. Now you'll be able to earn these with in-game currency called Seals of Endeavor. You will be able to buy anything that is in the current crate lineup. Right now, these are the mounts in the current crate lineup. You can buy mounts, other mounts, skins, more mounts, animations, furnishings. You can buy all sorts of things with the Seals of Endeavor. Basically, if it's in the crate, you can buy it. So how do you earn the Seals of Endeavor? Well, they've added a new system here in the group menu. So you open up your group menu, and then below group and above zone guide and dungeon finder and battlegrounds, they've tucked in endeavors. And you can see here, kill 10 foes with weapon abilities. And once we complete this, we will get 2 Seals of Endeavor, and we might also get some experience and some transmutes along with it when we turn in the reward. We can do 3 dailies per day. So pick any 3 that sound interesting to you and do those every day. Then you also have weekly endeavors, such as kill 20 world bosses, complete 6 dungeons, or complete 5 public dungeon group events. These are going to reward you with 14 Seals of Endeavor. So you'll be able to earn 14 per week from the weekly endeavor, and you'll be able to earn 6 seals per day from the dailies. So make sure you participate in the endeavor system. It's going to be one of the most rewarding systems in the game now, as this is currently where all of the best mounts in the game are going to be located. Have you done your Seals of Endeavor today?
Next up, I'm going to talk about add-ons. Add-ons are only available on PC for the time being. You will not be able to use these on console. Add-ons are going to greatly change the way some of your UI looks. It's going to give you a lot of quality of life upgrades. It's going to do things like warn you about incoming one-shot mechanics, or tell you how much damage you're doing, or tell you what % of the party's damage you're doing, or make information a little bit easier to discern. If you decide to go ahead and get add-ons, and I highly recommend that you do if you're on PC, and again, check out my add-ons guide where I go in depth on all of the best must-have add-ons for Elder Scrolls Online. Again, that link's going to be in the description below. But you're going to want to use this program called Minion. The great thing about Minion is that you can search for add-ons. It'll list them in the order of popularity, right? My favorite add-ons. I won't go into depth on which add-ons you should get now. Again, that's in the video. But there's a lot of really good add-ons for this game that you just can't pass up. And I highly recommend you use Minion because every patch, all of these add-ons get broken, right? There's a patch that comes out by the devs and it breaks your add-ons, right? And so then all of these add-on authors, they have to update their add-ons. And if you don't use Minion, you've got to go and download the add-on one at a time, the zip files, and then go into your folder, unzip it, right? It's just a lot of work. Or every patch, you can just do this. Update all. And that feature right there alone makes it worth using Minion for all of your add-on needs. Not only that, it's pretty handy. I mean, whenever you're looking for one, you could just search for it in here. And the one that you want will come right up. Once you've installed your add-ons, you can open up the add-ons menu in game. Go to your options, hit add-ons, and you can see these drop down, right? So this here, if you hit this button, it'll show you which files you need. A lot of add-ons are going to need lib files. If an add-on has a red name, it's got a missing lib file. Here I've intentionally got some disabled so that you can see what that would look like. So after you install your add-ons, just come in here and make sure the text is white for the name. If it's white, then your add-on is likely working. If you install your add-on and it's not even showing up here, you installed it to the wrong folder. If it's red, you're missing a lib file. Just go to Minion, search for lib media provider, right? And install that. Now, this one, when you reload your UI, type /reload UI or /RU. And when it comes back up, you open this menu again, and this will be white now. This one will be accounted for. The add-ons that people come up with for this game are absolutely amazing. Can't stress it enough. If you're on PC, give them a spin. Try them out, especially the ones I've recommended in my video. And wow. And that is it, guys. That is the essentials. That is the basics of Elder Scrolls Online. I know that was really long. If you stuck through this the entire time, can you let me know in the comments below? I would be fascinated to see how many people watch this entire thing. You're an absolute legend if you did. And I know that was a lot. If you forget any of it, feel free to come on back. I've got the timestamps in the description, so you can refer to any section of this video when you need to. I've got tons of other YouTube videos where I go more in depth on each of these topics. Don't be afraid to search my catalog of YouTube videos if you're ever looking for more information, or just swing by my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/LuckyGhostTV, where I stream myself playing Elder Scrolls Online 5 days a week. Throughout that entire stream, I'm helping new players get acquainted with the game, helping them farm gear, and teaching them the mechanics of trials and dungeons. So if you ever want to hang out with someone else who loves ESO, please come swing by. I'm happy to hang out with you. And if you found this video to be helpful, please don't forget to give it a like and a subscribe. That's going to help me out a ton.
Finally, I'd like to thank my YouTube members for supporting the channel by becoming members. To find out how to become a member of this channel and what the perks are, click the join button below.
As always, guys, I hope you have a fantastic day, night, or evening, wherever you might be. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.